All right. Good evening, Santa Monica. I'm going to call the January 10th regular meeting of the Santa Monica City Council to order. Mr. De La Torre, Councilmember De La Torre, will you lead us in the pledge, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Clerk, can we have the roll call?
Councilmember Zwick. Here. Councilmember Parra.
Here.
Councilmember Brock.
Here.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete.
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. We have 6 present, and I understand Councilmember Terrosis is on the way, so we'll get started. Can we call the first item on the agenda, please?
Yes, we have public input. Public comment is permitted only on items not on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prohibits the City Council from taking any action on items not listed on the agenda, including issues raised under this agenda item. And I believe we have 18 speakers for this.
All right, and since we do have a lot of people who appear to be new to our council meetings, we do ask that you silence your phones or put them on vibrate so as not to disturb the meeting. And also, I believe we have translation services available for those who will need it. And for those people who use a translator, you will get 4 minutes instead of the regular 2 to speak, so there's an opportunity for full translation. With that, we'll start. But typically what we do is we line up along, I'll call 3 or 4 names, and you can line up along the wall. And then in the middle of the process, we'll call some more names and go through the list. So the first 3 names I'm going to call are Jerry Rubin, Maria Esparza, and Lucien Tudor.
Thank you very, very much. Jerry Rubin, Santa Monica. Happy New Year, of course. Mayor Davis, Mayor Pro Tem Negrete, City Manager White, City Attorney Sloan, all you council members, all you wonderful Santa Monica residents and visitors. I just wanted to unofficially talk about a proposal for a tree of gratitude for my late wife, Marissa, who, as you know, passed away from the devastating effects of stage 4 pancreatic cancer not too long ago. I did send an email, and I believe a letter of support will be coming from our Recreation and Parks Commission that unanimously supports this, and from our dedicated City Arborist, Matthew Wells. But I just wanted to say thank you. Marissa promoted gratitude all the time, the whole 40 years I was married to her. That was her main thing. She always said, always have gratitude and be thankful through thick and thin for the good in our lives. That's something I think I certainly want to try harder to do, because there's always going to be some pretty devastating low points, and sometimes we don't really appreciate all the good things. Marissa was an ardent tree lover. She was the main one behind planting the Children's Tree of Life. He named it. She funded the plaque. She designed the wording on the plaque and worked with our late esteemed Mayor Ken Edwards to come up with the proclamation. Is time's up?
Time's up, Mr. Rubin. Thank you very much.
Continue for the next couple weeks.
Sounds good. Happy New Year to you as well. Maria Esparza.
Buenas tardes.
Do we have a translator? Yes, we do. Okay.
Buenas tardes. Muchas gracias por dejarme exponer mi punto por el cual no estoy de acuerdo con la lotería. Soy una vendedora de fruta y la lotería no me favorece porque si no tengo mi número sorteado ese día, yo perdería toda mi mercancía.
Hello, she's here to voice her displeasure with the new lottery vending system for the Pier area because she believes that it is not fair to have her livelihood be decided by a lottery.
Yo perdería toda mi mercancía si no sale mi número sorteado. Aparte, no puedo comprar una sola cantidad para un día. Tengo que comprar cantidades grandes para mejores precios.
And she has to buy product for many days in advance. And being under this lottery system, she feels she may not be able to have a set amount of days she can be there in order to prepare for the day, and her food might go to waste.
Aparte, la mayoría de vendedores no estamos de acuerdo por la lotería porque a nadie no podemos vender basado en un solo día que nos salga sorteado. Queremos que nos escuchen y que seamos la mayoría, que nos tomen en cuenta a cada uno nuestras necesidades.
And the majority of vendors are not in agreement with this new rule, and she believes the vendors should be consulted in order to revise this to make it more equitable and fair.
Y definitivamente con lo de la fruta no trabajaría la lotería. No es pérdida completa si no nos sale sorteado el número.
Especially with the fruit vending, which is very important, and she's concerned about the spoilage, and it's very important that this be resolved.
Muchas gracias por escucharme. Es todo.
Thank you. That is all.
Thank you for coming here this evening. Before you begin, Mr. Tudor, I'm going to call several more names. I have Teresa with no last name, Irene Ruiz, and Dulce. So, Mr. Tudor, you can go ahead and start. Thank you.
Yes, again, Happy New Year, everybody. And I'm here to advocate for outdoor dining. Outdoor dining, which we activate the 1200 block on the promenade. And as a conclusion of 88 report, we have just 7 tables left out there. I'm going to give you a financial report, what cost us getting out of the roadway for the past October, November, and December numbers. We lose $211,000 in profits. So that's $100,000 of it was in red. So we put $100,000 in these 3 months just to be alive. I had to let go 29 people which few of them are still here advocating for them jobs, but people, single moms, people which comes from other countries trying to do a better life in here. So we limited the resources we learn into a pandemic because of the creativity of the city, the creativity of the economical development. But now we just take that away. In a moment when we're not financially very well as a city, as a business model, I think innovation it's a very important factor, and that cannot be led by people who lead to be more into making rules or just respecting the previous rules. So I hope this is a wake-up call and you're gonna take action and help us somehow, but it's very hard for me as business owner to go with the same business model and be profitable on the promenade. Promenade doesn't have people. It's 5,000 people less than last year, and last year we were in the middle of pandemic. 1200 block is 90% vacant. So let's get all together and let's find solutions because we have enough problems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tudor. Teresa, I'm sorry I don't have a last name listed here.
Thank you. My name is Teresa Nguyen, and I'd like to again speak about restoring our outdoor dining. I've worked at 1212 a little less than a year, and I can wholeheartedly say this has been so progressive to both my professional and personal growth. As an example, 2 days ago, I spoke to one of my coworkers who's leaving his second job, even though it pays him twice as much. And I asked why. He said, well, he loves us so much more. I think that's a true testament to not only our team and our management, but how important we are to the community. And just imagine the heavy heart we have to come here and fight, and the fact that we can't protect people and loyal employees like that. As a host, I have the privilege of speaking to people just coming to our restaurant and walking by. I can't express how many times I will console an old local revisiting memory lane, walking down the promenade, reminiscing how many places used to be and now there's nothing. Or how many times I'll talk to a tourist who's confused and have to tell them, yes, this is actually the 3rd Street Promenade. I don't understand how policies can be picked and chosen when to enforce. And please restore the outdoor dining. I think that was a great move during COVID, and it will be very beneficial again. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Irma Ruiz?
Buenas tardes, agradezco el espacio. Soy una mujer emprendedora. Acabo de iniciar un negocio en Santa Mónica y en este pequeño espacio de venta me encuentro con la novedad de que quieren aportar o utilizar la lotería.
Hello, she's a small business owner. She's also speaking about the lottery, the new lottery system that will be implemented at the pier.
Bien, soy nueva, tengo toda la inversión, quizá para mucha gente es muy poquito, pero toda mi inversión está en este pequeño negocio y la lotería vendría a dar todos mis sueños hacia abajo porque yo no puedo trabajar algunos días, yo necesito trabajar todos los días y por muchas horas, pero la lotería para mí sería como cortarme mis alas, cortarme la energía de trabajar y de emprender mi negocio.
All my money is invested in this small business, and being in this lottery system, I feel it is like clipping my wings because I need to be able to work every day, and all the money I have invested is in this card. It will go to waste if I'm not able to get assigned a spot in the lottery.
El grupo de mujeres que me apoyó para atreverme a formar este negocio durante muchos meses me dio la energía de luchar. Y con esta situación, la verdad, todo el trabajo que hicimos en meses se me vino abajo, porque si yo hubiera sabido que iban a hacer este tipo de situación, lotería, vaya, es como ganarme la lotería, como ganarme el $1,000,000, es difícil para mí. Yo no estoy de acuerdo con la lotería.
The group of women that I'm part of gave me the courage to speak on this issue. I feel that this lottery system will not be fair because it will be like winning like a lottery ticket. So it's a very rare chance, and I feel it's not just for the majority of vendors that will not be selected.
Okay. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have Dulce, and before you begin, ma'am, we'll call up Nicholas Carrillo, Jorge Luis Cruz, and Will Bold.
Hola, mi nombre es Dulce. Gracias por escucharnos, darnos un tiempo. Yo vengo a decir que no queremos la lotería porque no es justo que la ciudad nos esté haciendo una lotería cuando no va a funcionar. Y también pido que cuando la ciudad haga cambios, que nos los haga en escrito y que haga una reunión para entender qué va a hacer cambios la ciudad.
I also believe that this lottery system is unfair, and I would like to request the city, when the changes are considered, to please submit them in writing and to notify the vendors that will be impacted by this in order that their voices are being considered.
Y también estoy pidiendo de que cuando den tickets, avisar que también los den en escrito antes de darnos un ticket. Y que la ciudad abra más espacios para los más vendedores que somos, porque no nomás somos 10 vendedores, somos demasiados vendedores y exigimos y pedimos que abran más espacios para los vendedores y también queremos que nos hagan respetar como vendedores que somos. Ya no queremos más racismo para el vendedor, porque nos están discriminando. A nosotros los vendedores nos sentimos acosados, nos sentimos completamente discriminados de la ciudad.
And also regarding code enforcement, she believes that there is racism in part of some of the officers, and the system is not fair. They should provide warnings to the vendors instead of just citing them and taking away their merchandise, to be more fair to these street vendors. And also regarding the 10 spaces for the lottery program, there's a lot more than 10 vendors, so that is an issue that is a big concern, that how are all the other people going to be able to sell, and this is excluding them, and it is unfair.
Pues es todo lo que yo pido, que nos hagan escuchar nuestros derechos también, porque también tenemos derechos como vendedores ambulantes, y pedimos, como les vuelvo a decir, que si la ciudad hace cambios, que los haga en escrito. Para los cambios que ellos quieren hacer, los pedimos escrito. Y ya no queremos más tickets tampoco. Queremos que nos abran espacio, por favor.
And just to reiterate that there should be warnings issued to the vendors before being cited, and any changes to the law or any to the lottery system, it should be communicated in writing to the vendors, and in Spanish preferably as well.
Muchas gracias por su atención.
Thank you. Nicholas Carrillo.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Carrillo. I work at 1212. I thank you for allowing us for our voice to be heard. Exactly 2 years ago to this date, I was freezing homeless on Venice Beach. It was lawless. There was abductions, violence, drugging, death, and this jacket that I'm wearing right here was my home. This jacket kept me warm, kept me safe, gave me a sense of security and warmth. And last September, I talked to you all about how restaurants with outdoor dining and patios allowed me the chance, because they opened up spaces for extra servers to get a job and work my way out of the vicious cycle that was homelessness. Since then, I used that to gain a real home with a roof over my head, security, warmth, everything that I ever dreamed of. It was because of these patios that granted me this. I work at 1212, and we have this patio that was such a huge feature. And since we have last talked to you, we've had to reduce our patio 3 times. We've been in compliance with the ADA and the fire department, and since then, guests have commented on how much they love the space and how they did not understand why we were taking away such a great feature to the promenade. If the promenade is a pedestrian walkway, you want to attract guests naturally. We only have 1212 Cabo, Casa Martin on the boardwalk. Most of it is empty with no crowd. There's no homeless people. With a crowd, there's no homeless people. When I was homeless in Venice, I would come up to Santa Monica to escape the insanity and walk the promenade. It was empty, a ghost town. There was people using drugs, people passed out, people overdosing. You need businesses around in order to prevent that. The homelessness issue is getting huger with 70,000 people in this city that are homeless. Let's try to keep jobs alive and prevent people from losing them to keep us and our...
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cruz?
That I don't agree with the lottery. It affects us. Me as I have 10 cars right here in Santa Monica, fruit carts. It will affect all my workers deciding who's gonna work or not. And plus, it's already a lot of harassment through the task force against my workers, getting harassed, getting a lot of tickets for no reason. It's like you guys coming to work and get a parking ticket every day, get your car towed or anything like that, you will be pissed too. I've been here almost 20 years. Most of the time, I didn't have a permit. They came here like 2 years ago, came down here, talked to us, told us like nice things, having a permit. We were not going to be harassed by anyone. We got our permits now, and we're being harassed more than we used to be. They give us tickets every day, 2 or 3 times a day. When my workers are right there, working, making their living, like I'm making my living, they get tickets every day, 2 or 3 tickets, and it's not $1, it's $500 each ticket. So I'm selling like $200 and I have a ticket $500, so it doesn't add up. At the end of the day, I have to pay commissary. I gotta pay you guys the permit. I gotta pay parking. I gotta pay gas, food. So this is not a business. I was making more profit out of when I didn't have a permit, and it's just a lot of harassment through task force. They take their job so serious. I agree with that, but they're hurting us. They're making fun of us. They're harassing all my people. I don't know why is the reason. They turn off their cameras and they harass us. I got videos and everything. That's why a lot of the Santa Monica task force people are getting sued for the same reason that they being attacked the vendors. We're not coming to make a big deal right here. We're not coming to make it a problem. We're trying to make a living out of here. I've been working here for 20 years almost, since I was a little kid with my mom. And all the officers know me. I'm not a gangbanger like they say. I'm not a problem to Santa Monica. But those police.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Mr. Bold? And before you begin, I'm going to call three more names: Alejandro Hernandez, Elena Hernandez, and Kayla Smith. Go ahead, Mr. Bold.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Hello to you all. Today I'm here to speak about outdoor dining in the 3rd Street Promenade. I've moved here from the Valley of Los Angeles 2 years ago, and I came to Santa Monica to work at 1212, knowing that the 3rd Street Promenade is very active and popular, and that it's a beautiful restaurant to be able to pay my bills. Since then, a lot of things have changed, and I have not been able to support myself as of late due to the economy, and then also, largely in part, my job being reduced to very little nowadays. I've been working there for a long time. It's always been great. We've been a great addition to the community. We've had a lot of regulars that have loved us and are very confused with why they're not able to enjoy the outdoor dining and everything that has to do with that. My coworkers and I, on the other hand, are some lifelong friends, and a lot of our lives have changed, and I've been losing a lot of them just due to our restaurant and our owner, Lucian, trying his best to be able to support us, but with the profit margins and everything, it's been very hard. And I just come to you guys to ask to please let us continue to be able to support ourselves and the community and to keep the good times going. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hernandez.
Hola, mi nombre es Alejandro. Tengo 5 años trabajando aquí en Santa Mónica como vendedor ambulante.
Hello, my name is Alejandro. I have 5 years working here as a vendor.
Tengo muchos puntos como vendedor ambulante y uno de los puntos es la lotería. No se me hace justo dar lugares estables porque somos muchos vendedores y a como que nos avisen la ciudad. Mejor a como estamos trabajando ahorita, llegas temprano y agarras tu lugar. Pero nada de eso de lotería porque primera nos afecta mucho porque somos muchos vendedores. Se nos hace injusto que muchos no agarren un lugar.
I also feel that the limited amount of slots in this lottery system is unfair. There are a lot more vendors than the slots that have been decided upon. And I feel that there should be a system where like first come, first serve instead of having this lottery system.
Otra de las cosas, la policía, la ciudad nos hostiga mucho a nosotros como vendedores. Nos da tickets por cualquier cosa. Como no puedes ir al baño porque cuando ellos llegan y si no estás, ya tienes tu ticket. Eso es hostigación para uno.
I also feel the police and code enforcement are harassing the vendors. You can't go to the bathroom. If you go to the bathroom, then you will be cited for leaving your car unattended.
Y una de las cosas más, pues es todo. Nada más que no racismo, por favor. A nosotros como vendedores somos igual que un restaurante, tenemos nuestros permisos. Ustedes como ciudadanos hicieron que sacáramos permisos y los sacamos. Y aún así seguimos con racismo hacia nosotros. Lo único que les pido, no racismo y respeten al vendedor ambulante.
No racism or discrimination against vendors. Please wear like any other business or restaurant in the area, and they should be treating vendors like humans.
Eso es todo, muy amable, gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Elena Hernandez.
Hola, buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Elena Hernández. La razón por la que yo vine, porque igual soy vendedora ambulante acá en Santa Mónica, y igual me acabo de enterar que tienen un permiso para trabajar acá y sortear. Igual no se me hace justo, porque unos, como dice el compañero, unos llegan más luego, otros llegan después. Entonces, el que llega más luego no puede agarrar el lugar que no le corresponde. Entonces, yo creo que no es justo que se sortee, porque el que llega temprano se merece el mejor lugar.
I also disagree with this new lottery system. I feel that the system should be where the first vendor to get to that spot should have that spot for the day, as opposed to being one vendor randomly assigned a spot, and even if the vendor's not there, then that space is still theirs even though they're not present. So it should be whoever arrives first to take that spot for the day.
Entonces, yo quiero agarrar un permiso para vender a Santa Mónica, pero si yo veo que van a sortear y me va a tocar un lugar que no va a estar tan bueno, entonces yo creo que no es justo, que voy a pagar muchos impuestos, voy a estar haciendo mis taxes a cada 3 meses, voy a estar haciendo una inversión, y para lo que voy a agarrar y voy a pagar muchos gastos acá en Santa Mónica, todo es carísimo, y entonces yo veo que no es justo.
I feel that it's unfair that I will be making this investment in the card and paying license fees and taxes, and when I'm not guaranteed to have a spot, and I'm not guaranteed to have an income, even if I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing.
Y para trabajar igual, yo voy a ver los días que yo voy a estar viniendo, y qué tal si los días que a mí me va a tocar venir, o a la hora de sortear me va a tocar venir los días que no se vende. Entonces mi inversión y todo eso se va a echar a perder. Entonces yo creo que si por favor no pueden hacer, o sea, no sortear los lugares.
So my investments will go to waste if I'm not given a spot, and so I please ask you again to please no to the lottery system.
Porque eso no queremos, todos los que estamos aquí presentes, ese fue nuestro objetivo, venir a hablar con ustedes, a decirles que no queremos sorteo.
And everyone that is gathered here today is against this lottery system, and that's why we implore you to consider to implement this system.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you, ma'am. Kayla Smith. And Ms. Smith, before you begin, I'm going to call 3 more names. Cynthia Anderson, Alexander Stan, and I apologize, there seem to be, some of these names seem to be a little bit truncated, and Abraham Chapman. Go ahead, Ms. Smith.
Perfect, thank you. Hi, City Council members. My name's Kayla Smith, and I'm speaking on behalf of 1212 Santa Monica. We've been fighting and fighting for months back and forth in regards to the outdoor dining. Recently, we received the news in regards to the ADA compliance on the 3rd Street Promenade and the removal of our outdoor dining area. However, other business models such as the kiosks on the promenade and the farmers market do not follow these ADA compliances, and they have been quote-unquote grandfathered in. I've lost numerous colleagues and friends that I've worked with over these past few months, and there's so many benefits of the outdoor dining, especially on a street like the promenade that continues to decline month after month. I'm asking for your help, whether that be with a letter of support or even maybe an idea or solution to help me and my colleagues not lose their jobs. I'd love to see the 3rd Street Promenade go back to what it was in the 2000s, as I hope we all do, and see the livelihood and community come back together. I'll be sending you all an email after this, and if you'd like to support, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Cynthia Anderson, and it looks like there's more to your name, but it looks truncated.
Cynthia Anderson Barker, Your Honor. I'm an attorney with the National Lawyers Guild, and we've been working 2.5 years with the street vendors here in Santa Monica. We've been meeting, ACLU, Public Counsel, and the National Lawyers Guild have been meeting with the city attorney, the city manager, code enforcement, and Santa Monica PD. And we've been meeting to discuss issues that were outlined in a report that we released last summer, the city of Santa Monica's treatment of low-income street vendors. So what we've done is we've documented all the issues the vendors are bringing up to you today through an interview process, and we've also talked about the law and how in some areas the Santa Monica has actually violated the law. For example, sending street vendors late fee notices and trying to collect late fee fines for citations when the state law specifically prohibits it. But I'd like to make sure that all of you have read this, because we do have some asks today, and the vendors are definitely talking about the problem with the lottery system, but we've also highlighted a whole series of issues we'd like you to address. And I'd like to know, am I allowed to pass out the report and also the request of the City Council? Or can you take information?
Yes, we can. If there's anything you'd like us to see, whether you have one copy or multiple copies, you can hand it to the clerk and she can distribute it.
I have multiple copies, so I'll give her those after this. So basically, one of the issues raised today is sort of the arbitrary and unfair enforcement of the vending laws. And for example, one vendor mentioned, well, we want a warning before we get a ticket. So what we've seen lately is you'll have a code enforcement officer giving a warning verbally, but the other officer is actually writing a ticket at the same time. And so we've been asking for written notices. We're also asking, of course, to have the vendors sit at the table and work out the whole lottery system. So we have a series of asks. Please read the documents I give to the clerk.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Barker.
Thank you. Okay.
Hello and Happy New Year. My name is Alexandru Stan. I'm here in behalf of 1212 Santa Monica. I came 1.5 years ago from Romania straight for this restaurant. I found here a very nice restaurant with a big outdoor dining. Everybody was coming for. A lot of events we had in our restaurant, and a lot of people asking for outdoor dining. We've done back then like 800 people over brunch and 800 over dinner. So a lot of people were coming here in Santa Monica. Of course, we are caring about our business, but we are not bringing people only for our business, but for Santa Monica also. And we have a lot of events with family, maybe events, but a lot of them are corporate, so they are coming from other states or other cities in Santa Monica for our restaurant, because we became a destination, not only a beautiful restaurant. Taking our outdoor dining, you are killing kind of half of the business or more. So give us a solution, please, for that, because we are reinventing ourselves as managers there to bring people in and to make something new there, and to be what we work for our clients right now, an outstanding destination. So please give us either ideas, be with us in this struggle, and let's make a team together. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll keep our outdoor dining. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chapman? And before you begin, sir, I'm going to call 3 more names: Christopher Chavez, Teresa Murcia, and Jane McCaffrey. And you can go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
Last month, I told you about the severely negative impact that the Santa Monica Police Booking Department's decision to put my information into the files of a traveling serial offender has had on my life. I informed you of the decision to deny my tort claim. I advised you to contact me with regards to obtaining my file on this matter. Thus far, no one with the city has done so. To me, this is a fight for my life. I cannot afford to back down so easily. When I could not find a lawyer in LA who knows how to file a motion for judicial clearance, I wrote it myself. When the Sacramento courts refused to put my motions on calendar, I attended an arraignment in order to speak with the judge, and then convinced him to assist me in doing so. When you did not reach out to me to obtain my file on this matter, I emailed it to the City Council general email address, email case number CS0052122. You cannot honestly claim that the facts of my situation were not made available to you. I seek neither fame nor fortune. It can be to the benefit of the city that I just want my life back and only seek to be made whole. It is recklessly unwise to fail to bind someone in my situation to inaction with a release of all claims, or to fail to bind someone in my situation to silence with a non-disclosure agreement. When left with only civil litigation or media exposure as recourse, such a person could instigate an inquiry in the total number of persons impacted by similar police misconduct, which runs the city the risk of facing an expensive class action suit. I have extended an olive branch. It's up to you to reach out and take it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chavez.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Christopher Chavez, and I am the Executive Director of the National Lawyers Guild of Los Angeles. And I'm here today to talk to you about a simple word: respect. The Santa Monica street vendors deserve it, and for far too long have not received it. The street vendors are business owners, just the same as their brick and mortar counterparts, and they deserve to be treated as such. Tourists come from all over the world to eat their foods, to buy their products. The street vendors are an essential element of Southern California beach culture. Without them, our beaches would just be another corporate beach. The street vendors provide personality, they provide variety, and they're an indispensable element of our local culture. But yet, despite this fact, they are not treated with respect. And I want to give an example of where we see that. A lot of folks have mentioned the lottery, and that is a symptom of a broader problem. The street vendors are not formally consulted when decisions are made that impact their businesses. They're not afforded an opportunity to comment formally in public on these proposals. The city should, as others have mentioned, make these policies available in English and Spanish and in writing, so that vendors have a chance to read them, digest them, and offer a fully informed public comment. Further, there must be a formalized process for this, so the city can engage meaningfully with the street vendors, and the street vendors have a chance to offer their input. This must be a two-way street. The vendors are business owners, and you all are the city council, and there must be a relationship between you and them that allows for meaningful dialogue. And I'll just close by saying this. It is often said that respect is earned, not given. It is my opinion that the vendors have long earned respect. They are an essential element of the culture in Southern California, and they contribute greatly to the vibrancy of our beaches. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Teresa Murcia.
Buenas tardes. Gracias por atendernos y abrirnos este espacio. Soy vendedora de aquí de Santa Mónica. Tengo más de 20 años trabajando para Santa Mónica y a mí no se me hace justo que se haga la lotería, porque si no me toca, ¿dónde quedo yo? Y a otra de las cosas, queremos respeto hacia nosotros, porque a pesar de que tenemos ya nuestros permisos, nos sentimos acosados con la policía y con la ciudad.
Thank you. I am a vendor here in Santa Monica for over 20 years. I feel also against this lottery system, and I'm dealing with harassment from police and code enforcement. And I also disagree with just certain people being assigned to the lottery, and not everyone will be selected.
De que no podemos estar en un lugar, vamos llegando, vamos pasando, y si llegamos a topar la policía y la ciudad, luego nos dan ticket. Y eso es lo que ya no queremos. Queremos que la policía y la ciudad nos respete, porque a pesar de los lugares, yo me siento acosada, a pesar de que pago mi permiso, me siento acosada hacia la ciudad y hacia la policía.
We demand more respect from police and code. I feel even though I pay for my permit and I pay all these fees, I'm still accosted by the city at every time I'm trying to sell my merchandise.
Ya no queremos más tickets. Por favor, esperemos que nos escuchen.
We hope that you listen to us. We don't want any more tickets. We want warnings to be provided.
Gracias.
Thank you. Jane McCaffrey. And then, Ms. McCaffrey, before you begin, we have one more speaker on this item. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? Which would be Katie McKeon, it looks like. McEwen. All right. So, Ms. McCaffrey, you may begin.
Good evening. I'm here to speak for the street vendors. I've been a resident of Santa Monica since 1977, and I love this city. And I think of it as a fair, equal opportunity city. So I think you might not know, as a city council, such a small, it's an individual group of people that hard for you to know the issues. So I so appreciate that you would listen to what the Lawyers Guild has carefully put out to address making it fair as our city, because they add a festive nature to being a tourist here. I know they're at Hollywood Bowl and they're down after the Lakers. It's fun. It's part of, I agree, it's part of what makes LA a wonderful place and Santa Monica a wonderful place, to have these fun things that taste delicious and they have, a lot to offer. So at the very end of these suggestions, there's an ask to fund a community organizer position within a local nonprofit who can work with the vendors and be a liaison with city leadership and help design and adjust vending policies and plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCaffrey. Ms. McEwen.
Thank you so much. My name is Katie McEwen. I'm a staff attorney with Public Counsel. We're a legal aid organization based here in LA County. I am a member of the LA Street Vending Campaign and have worked on street vending issues for the past 5 years plus. So I do want to provide a little bit of context in the wake of Senate Bill 946, which was passed 4 years ago. Santa Monica actually took some really positive steps to actually implement a vending program, creating a relatively accessible permit within the state laws as they were at the time, and also creating accessible educational materials. However, we have a very serious problem at the pier. Much of that is detailed in the report that the National Lawyers Guild put out, as well as evidenced in the comments that were made today by many of our vending business owners. However, the city is attempting to use a very blunt instrument, a no vending zone, without giving any legitimate alternatives to this really valued economic activity. So in attempts to enforce this no vending zone, relationships between vending businesses, code enforcement, and law enforcement have deteriorated even further than was the case before the vending program was put into place. It's an artificial constraint on this economic activity, and the lottery is not going to solve that issue. So we're going to continue to have antagonistic relationships, not only among the vending businesses, but you're going to see me a lot more, if we don't come up with some real and creative solutions. So I really encourage you all to think about real opportunities and real forums for the vending input and to come up with creative solutions to this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McEwen. And as I understand it, Madam Clerk, that closes the general public input item number 1. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, then can we have item number 2, please?
Item number 2 is public input and is on agenda items under closed session, special agenda items, and consent calendar. And we have no public speakers for that.
All right. I'm showing 3 on my list, but those are for later. Is that correct?
Later, correct.
Okay, I have 3 on those. I want to make sure I don't miss anyone. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening.
Thank you.
All right, we'll let them take a couple of seconds to clear the room before we move on. All right, Madam Clerk, can you go ahead and call the next item, please?
Yes, we have the closed session, and you have one item. It's an existing litigation. It's Biden versus Nebraska, U.S. Supreme Court docket. And we, as I said, we had no speakers on that.
All right, and I will turn to the city attorney, Mr. Sloan, and ask what time can we expect to be back?
I think we can expect to be back by 7 p.m.
All right, thank you very much. We'll be back at 7 p.m. All right, we are back from closed session. Thank you, everyone. Not too late tonight, only missed it by 4 minutes. I'm going to turn to the city attorney, Mr. Sloan, and ask if he has any report out from closed session.
Yes, in the Biden versus Nebraska case, the city of Santa Monica will be joining in an amicus brief on behalf of the Biden administration. And that was a unanimous vote.
Thank you very much. We will move on to the next item of business, Madam Clerk.
So next we have the city manager's report. It's the COVID-19 emergency order.
And before, Lindsay, you jump in, I just have a few remarks, and then I'll turn it over to you. So good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and City Council. I'd like to start off this meeting with a big Happy New Year to everyone. This is our first meeting of the year, so happy 2023. And obviously, as all of us know, we've been experiencing, fortunately we're dry, but we're having this meeting during what has been absolutely record-breaking storms, and I hope everyone has been able to stay safe and warm over the last 2 days. I'd like to thank all of our essential staff who are responsible to calls for service and addressing needs in our public spaces, and that extends to Lindsay here, who represents OEM, our police department, our fire department, Public Works, DOT, who've all been on the front lines. And I do want to remind the community to please sign up for Santa Monica Alerts at santamonica.gov/alerts. And please do call 311 to report any service need, whether it's trees down, debris in the streets, flooding, whatever you may see. And also, please remember that all of our fire stations are equipped with sandbags during rain events for community use. I'd also like to share this Monday, January 16th, is Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And the city is partnering with the West Side Coalition and Santa Monica College on the 38th annual celebration at 9 a.m. at John Adams Middle School. The theme for 2023 is, "When you stand up for justice, you can never fail." The festivities will include inspirational remarks, music, and dance, and the presentation of Education and Community Light Awards. Dr. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr., a longstanding civil rights leader, is the keynote speaker, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing him speak. In just 2 weeks, we'll kick off Black History Month, and I hope you'll check santamonica.gov for a preview of what's coming up, and I'll certainly bring forward a lot more details at our next council meeting in 2 weeks. I mentioned this before, but it's also worth noting again that our annual State of the City will be broadcast live on YouTube and Channel 16 on February 7th at 5:30 p.m., and I hope everyone will tune in. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Resiliency Officer, Lindsay Call, who will talk about the status of our COVID-19 emergency declaration and the way forward. And before she jumps in, I do want to share some special acknowledgments for Lindsay, who has been on the front lines of our COVID response for now 3 years, just about, and has been an absolute tremendous leader, leading the organization and the community forward. And I know last year when I was here, she was distinguished in the community for her leadership. So being in front of her tonight is a true gift, and I truly appreciate all that she's done for the city, the organization, our workforce, and it's been a pleasure to get to work with her over the past year plus. So Lindsay, the floor is yours.
Oh, that's my bad, sorry.
No, it's okay. How am I doing this? How do I turn the mic on? Is it on?
It's on.
Perfect. Good evening. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. For those of you who don't know me, I am Lindsay Call. I serve as the Chief Resilience Officer of the Office of Emergency Management. That is 2 divisions, first 911 dispatch, and then emergency services and preparedness. So tonight I'll be wearing my disaster response hat and be sharing where we are with COVID-19 and then where we're moving forward, how we're moving forward. And like City Manager David said, I have been serving as the Emergency Operations Center Director for the last 3 years, but just representing a really amazing team. So thank you for that acknowledgement. So to start the presentation, I'd like to center the dialogue and the conversation, acknowledging the tremendous impact that COVID-19 has had on the Santa Monica community. Even though we're here to celebrate our progress, it's important to recognize that 287 Santa Monica residents have passed away from COVID-19, and over 25,000 Santa Monica residents have had COVID-19 infections. And there are many impacts of those persons who have been infected, such as hospitalizations, long COVID, so tremendous impact. And as we're, again, celebrating, there are many people who are immunocompromised, our healthcare workers who continue to deal with the impacts of COVID-19 every single day. So I just want to recognize that up front, even though we have made a lot of progress in the last 3 years. So for those of you who weren't here in 2020, I'll just kind of go through a very brief review of what our COVID-19 emergency order entails. So we activated the order, we had the proclamation on March 13th. Since that date, we've had 44 different supplements to the emergency order. Recently, there have not been very many changes. Really, it's updating it for things that have been codified through different programs or things that we can discontinue. It has had a lot of different accomplishments. So our eviction protections were part of the emergency order, and there were several business measures meant to kind of ease the burden that businesses, especially bars and restaurants, felt in the early days of the pandemic. The other major accomplishment of the emergency order was that it allowed the Emergency Operations Center to be activated and have a very robust response with a focus of protecting our most vulnerable populations as well as ensuring government continuity. So this is just a little list of the things that we've done in the last 3 years, really focusing on food insecurity, COVID community education and communications, vaccination and testing outreach, all of those different services. So it's been a long journey, but very rewarding. I want to take this opportunity, since I have the mic, to share my extreme gratitude for the Emergency Operations Center team that has led this response for the past 3 years. In April 2020, that was 275 staff members total, both field outreach team, planning, the high-level coordination. It was a very robust effort. And then since October 2020, it's been a core team of 15 staff members, and then 15 Department Operations Center coordinators who have really steered the ship. The 15 EOC staff members all have day jobs, or most of them have day jobs. And so we've been all trying to balance our day jobs and the COVID response, despite all of the peaks and valleys of COVID. So Delta, Omicron, et cetera, et cetera. And again, we've just been really focused on making sure that we are serving the most vulnerable through our food pantry, making sure that our businesses understand COVID compliance regulations, and then serving the public in the field. And it's not just the city staff alone. We were very fortunate to have strong partnerships with community organizations before the pandemic, and that served us incredibly well during the pandemic. Our partnerships with our local hospitals, the Santa Monica College, Barker Hangar, huge thanks to those organizations, our business community, the BIDS, the Chamber, SMTT, all of them had a huge role in getting the word out to their communities, providing services, pivoting their operations, and then a big thanks to those organizations who helped us with food distribution sites and vaccination sites. So now that I've said all my thanks, since it's award season, I wanted to give a quick update on where we're at with COVID-19. So some good news. Currently, we have the CDC community level is at medium. Also, our LA County response plan hospitalization metrics are also at medium. So that's really great news. Huge thanks to 92% of Santa Monica residents who have received at least one COVID-19 vaccination. That has made a massive impact on our progress, especially related to hospitalizations. I still want to encourage Santa Monica residents to get their bivalent booster. If you haven't gotten a booster since September 2022, it's time to get your updated shot. Only 34% of Santa Monica residents have received that shot, and it's really important for maintaining our immunity. So where are we going? Pfizer has suggested that in 2024, COVID will reach an endemic state. The two big factors driving our community immunity level is recent infection. And when I say recent, that means if you had an infection the last 6 months, and community vaccination rates. A big factor in the outlook of COVID is that 30%, 1 out of 3 persons worldwide have not received a single dose of the COVID-19 vaccination. And so that leaves a vulnerability when it comes to future variants and the need to potentially pivot quickly if there is a immunity evading variant that arises. But we are adapting to kind of the new normal, and we've been in this stage for quite a while. However, endemic diseases like the flu still require policy and prevention tools. So we're not totally out of the woods yet. State, county, and city governments are all incorporating COVID-19 prevention measures into their normal operating budget. And it's becoming the new normal, similar to the flu. And we still, unfortunately, anticipate operational impacts during winter in June and July due to case surges. So we still anticipate that that will be cyclical into this year. So what are other jurisdictions doing with their emergency order? So we anticipate the federal government will share what their plan is for the federal proclamation tomorrow. So apologies that I don't have an update on that. But we do expect that they will extend it for another 60 days, with it ending in March 2020, or with the next renewal period being potentially March 2023. And this is required for any FEMA reimbursement. The state of California will end its emergency order on February 28th, or at least that's what they've shared as the plan. And then LA City is planning to sunset their emergency order on February 1st. And currently we haven't received any information from our other Area A partners on their plans to sunset their local emergency orders in alignment with LA County or LA City or the state. One thing you might notice is that LA County is not mentioned. We have not received any information that they're planning to end the health officer order or any local proclamation in alignment with the state or LA City. So what is our plan for the city? We plan to align with the state and sunset the COVID-19 emergency order for our local jurisdiction on February 28th. What does that mean? So really at this point, it just decreases our likelihood that we'll receive financial reimbursement from FEMA for the ongoing COVID costs that we have. It also means that our as-needed staff who are working on recovery projects need to be demobilized in the next 6 months. So we will be incorporating or proposing potential costs that are for required activities for the biennial budget. Those proposals will come from finance and OEM for worker health requirements and the logistics needed to support that. So what are those requirements? Well, be excited. Cal-OSHA has implemented requirements for all California workplaces for the next 2 years. And that includes case management for workers and robust documentation, written notice to employees of a potential COVID-19 exposure, making COVID testing free to all workers who have had a close contact, and outbreak reporting and testing, including the requirement that we're required to report a major outbreak to Cal OSHA. So again, that just was implemented, and we expect that to last for at least 2 years. So in addition to those requirements that are in place for City of Santa Monica workers, the following activities will continue past the emergency order sunset. So mainly, Clover Park testing site will continue till at least the end of March. And then we have a month-to-month option if we want to continue that. We really will be focused on FEMA recovery and making sure that we're submitting our existing COVID-19 projects to FEMA for full reimbursement. And then focusing on EOC demobilization. We have a lot of supplies that we need to demob and do inventory of, and demobbing our as-needed staff. And so also I wanted to provide an update, since it's been a topic in previous council meetings, on the FEMA reimbursement status. So to date, we've received $1.5 million in reimbursement from FEMA. That all of those funds have been directed to the general fund. We have $3.5 million in projects that have been submitted to FEMA that we're waiting on final approval. And just, I can't thank the team who's working on FEMA recovery projects enough. It is very, very tedious work, and they have excelled at it. It's very impressive that we've gotten this much money. Projects like the Health Ambassador, our vaccine projects, the plexiglass that's surrounding me, all of those projects have been approved by FEMA already, and so we are hopeful that the remaining projects will be improved and allocated to the general fund. And so with that, happy to answer any questions or take feedback. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have any questions? Councilmember Terosas, and then Councilmember Parra.
So first of all, thank you so much. Thanks to your team. I know we haven't met or chatted formally, but just really appreciate it. Quick question. I know the FEMA reimbursements are really, really tedious and challenging. I think you might be aware I work for the County of LA, so we're always very concerned about this. But the question I have is that what's the likelihood that you're going to get this full $3.5 million? Is it just, hey, this is the process, it's a timeline? Do we think all of it qualifies, or are we not sure?
No, I think that we have a strong likelihood. We're batting a good average for the projects that we have submitted, and we've been responsive to the request for information that they've submitted. 2 projects are with Cal OSHA, where they just need to submit funding. So I'm confident that we'll receive reimbursement. For the COVID projects that happen after the February 28th date, I do not anticipate that we'll receive reimbursement for those projects.
Of course. And then how can we help let folks know to get the bivalent booster? What are we doing in terms of like public information awareness? And is there anything we can do as council members to help?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. We've been sharing on our social channels, our newsletters, so as much as you can repost, reshare, or share that information, that would be helpful. We've been having, before the holiday season, the EOC had a very large push to host community and staff COVID vaccine booster clinics. And so we're kind of evaluating if we're going to continue that, but we had 9 different clinics. So things like that would be incredibly helpful.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Parra, and then Councilmember Brock.
I also wanted to, I actually have comments, and so I wanted to take this moment again to thank Lindsay and Stephen from our OEM team and all staff assigned to the EOC. They did a tremendous job. For those of you that don't know, I'm also in emergency management for another city, part of the Area A City Network. And so we worked together the last 3 years, hand in hand, on the COVID emergency. And I have to tell you that not only did Santa Monica perform, but they actually kind of set the bar for the rest of us within Area A in terms of what to do and how to do it. And so Lindsay and Stephen were just a great resource to all of us in Area A. I also wanted to point out, too, that Santa Monica is our DMAC. It's our District Management Area Coordinator for Area A, which means that they are the liaison between Area A and the county. And so on top of holding down the fort for COVID, Santa Monica was also the contact or the liaison for the other 3 cities to the county. So they were our conduit. And so in terms of getting information, sharing information, on top of that, they also were kind of supervising the other Area A cities. So I wanted to really be clear about pointing that out, because it was a big job, especially in the early days of COVID. We were on the phone almost every single day. And we worked 7 days a week, and sometimes it was 16 to 18 hours a day. And we didn't have a first day off until sometime in June. So again, I want to applaud you tremendously for all the work that you and all our first responders, and that includes our public works teams and our police and fire, who were boots on the ground during this pandemic, when a lot of us, were very fortunate to be working at home. And I recognize that, and I really appreciate you, and I appreciate all the work. And one last thing is that not only did Santa Monica OEM successfully handle this declaration or emergency, but in the midst of all that, they proclaimed again for George Floyd. So they had 2 active EOCs going. They closed that one out, proclaimed again for presidential election, closed that one out, continued to work forward, and then Lindsay also had a baby. So congratulations, and thank you so much for all the work that you do, and for Santa Monica, for our field, for Area A, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brock.
I had a question that's sort of related, but I in the news today, I heard that both Moderna and Pfizer are going to lose federal funding for COVID vaccinations in the next 2 months. And how will that affect the average, you may not know, but how will that affect the average resident who needs to go out and get their booster, or didn't get their shots and needs to?
In California, we're very lucky that most people have some sort of basic insurance that will continue to provide coverage for those vaccines. So either through private insurance, Medicare, Medi-Cal, but it is concerning, of course, to have that as a potential risk in other parts of the country, because as we all know, diseases don't have any borders. They're not respectful of that. And so it could be a potential concern.
I also want to thank you and your department for your absolutely fantastic, dedicated work tirelessly over the last 3 years, and a huge congratulations on your baby girl.
Thank you, Ms. Call. I have a couple of questions myself as well. The first one is a follow-up a little bit to the vaccine question. It's my understanding that for those in our community who are unable to leave their home for whatever reason, that the county does provide in-home vaccination. Can we tell people how to find out about that option as a service?
Absolutely. LA County provides that service to anyone who needs it. Their information is on their website. I don't have the phone number, but if you call 211, they would be able to connect you to schedule that type of appointment. They would also be able to assist you with scheduling a vaccine appointment in any sort of way, or questions related to treatment. A lot of times right now, if someone tests positive for COVID and they have increased risk factors, we also want to advocate that those individuals seek treatment options, either through their primary care physician or through the county via 211 services. So for anyone who is interested in vaccines or treatment, or testing, 211 is a great resource.
All right, we'll remind everyone to call 211. The second question I have, and I think this may be for the city attorney, is I know in the city of Los Angeles, with them ending their COVID emergency, they are also ending their eviction protection program. We have an eviction protection program, which I believe we separated, if you will, from the COVID emergency, but I'm wondering if the city attorney could just let residents know what the status of that is, because I think there may be some people who will hear that in Los Angeles, it's my understanding there are already some eviction notices, et cetera, going out, and they may be concerned that they'll be hearing similar things from Santa Monica.
Yes, well, the county still has eviction protection for reasons for non-payment of rent that goes through January 31st, and of course that does apply to residents of Santa Monica also. And then the city's eviction protection program for reasons other than non-payment of rent runs through the end of February of this year.
Thank you very much. All right, do we have any other questions or comments? Councilmember Parra.
Mayor, I have that phone number for the in-house.
Oh, wonderful. That would be great.
So if you are homebound and need to get vaccinated, you can call the LA County's number at area code 833-540-0473.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful information, because I do know we have some people in Santa Monica who, for whatever reason, are unable to leave, and I think that's an important resource that hasn't gotten enough play. So thank you for having that. Other than that, Ms. Call, I'll join my colleagues in thanking you for all the work you've done. I know you and all of the city staff, from the city manager's office on down, have done yeoman's work during this crisis. And as we move into the endemic phase, out of the pandemic phase, I think you'll still continue to be called upon to do various things, but we really do appreciate it. And thank you very much for everything and for the presentation tonight.
Thank you all.
And does that conclude the presentation, City Manager? All right, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, we will move on to the big question of the evening.
Do any council members have anything to report on travel since our last meeting?
That is always the big question. And as we move into the year, and as people are reporting, there will be rewards for brevity in responding to that question. That is something Mayor Winterer started, and I intend to continue. All right, seeing no hands up for that one, Madam Clerk, let's move on to the consent calendar.
Okay, so we have the consent calendar. All items will be considered and approved in one motion unless removed by a council member for discussion. In accordance with Charter Section 615, the adoption of all ordinances and resolutions shall be by reading only unless a council member present dissents. And let me, Mayor, make a note that there's a correction on item 5F. There's a typo for the meeting dates in November. The first meeting in November should be November 14th, not November 11th. Thank you, Councilmember Brock. And as far as, and did you want to ask the question?
Yes, so, and Madam Clerk, have we been informed by any council members whether or not they intend to pull any items on the consent calendar?
Councilmember Zwick said that he was going to pull item 5B. Is that still correct?
No.
Okay.
All right. Any other items to be pulled? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for passage of the entire consent calendar. Moved by Brock, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Negrete. May we have a roll call vote, please?
Hold on a second. Brock and then Negrete?
Yes, Brock and Negrete.
Councilmember De La Torre?
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete?
Yes.
Councilmember Brock?
Yes.
Councilmember Parra?
Yes.
Councilmember Zwick?
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes, and I'll remind everyone to push your button so it can all be recorded for the benefit of posterity. That includes you, Councilmember Zwick. Oh, hit the yes button. There you go. All right, that passes unanimously 7-0. That way everyone knows how you voted. And we can move on to the the consent calendar passes by unanimous vote. We can move on to public input for remaining agenda items only. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
That is correct, and it looks like we have 4 speakers.
I see 4 speakers. I'm going to call out all 4 names. We're going to ask you to line up in order along the wall there. Denise Barton, I actually see Denise Barton twice on my list.
Yeah, she's speaking on 2 different items.
Okay, so Denise Barton, Ruth Ann Shanley, Stacy Griesbach, and do you have any other names, Madam Clerk?
Ann Hoover.
And Ann Hoover. All right, thank you.
And Ms. Barton, can you tell us which items you're speaking on?
I'm speaking on, I don't have a mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, it says podium mic on.
Yeah, it's on.
I'm speaking on items 10C and 10D. Good evening. On item 10C, my first couple of questions would be, isn't the HUD code exemption only supposed to apply to 100% or buildings with the affordable housing in it, not the entire project, as you did with the project on Santa Monica Notion and the Miramar Hotel? Next, according to HUD, aren't affordable housing units supposed to be comparable to non-affordable housing units? I ask because waiving of development standards can result in subpar buildings. I live in a relatively new building which opened in 2016. Yet one of the things we've been experiencing for a year and a half is leaking on both levels of the underground parking. And although it has been said to be fixed before, it keeps coming back, as well as leaving standing water for weeks on P2. Which also might have something to do with the driveway not sloping properly so the water reaches the drain, or maybe it has something to do with the water-damaged ceiling. And to begin to get attention to this issue, an entity outside the city had to be called. Or what about in my building, the insulation between the floors is lacking, resulting in little soundproofing between floors. So my question here would be, would this be an example of waiving building standards long before this action was put into place? So I have to ask, how low can the development standards go? Or what about the bright unshielded lights newly installed light at the NRDC building, which only negatively affects affordable housing units? So again, how low can the development standards for affordable housing go? Next, on item 10D, I want to question this item using the California government ethics law. To begin with, this item was brought up by Councilmember Negrete due to an employee smoking near her unit and negatively affecting her daughter, which sure does seem to be a personal issue. So would that fall under the use of public resources for private or political purposes, or failure to treat all members of the public in a fair and unbiased manner? I ask because in the discussion I heard nothing about the interests of smokers of cigarettes, and by restricting smoking from the residence unit, have you not only put cigarette smokers at a disadvantage? By this action, you want to stigmatize and put them at further disadvantage due to your previous actions? Then, as a council member, do you remember the city has a reduction of staff members, including in the code compliance department, yet you want to make them do more? And visualize this. You call a code compliance officer because someone is smoking, but by the time they get there, the person smoking is gone. So wouldn't this actually waste city resources? I also have to question this item because it was brought up due to an employee and not a resident. Yet what's being proposed includes residents. And since by your actions you've made Santa Monica the 6th most dangerous city in the state, one does have to wonder if this action is to put residents further in danger, especially downtown at night. In addition, since the city has so many slumlords managing buildings, might this be a way to further harass resident tenants, especially low-income ones? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barton. And just a reminder, Ms. Barton does a good job of it, but I know we have some people who, no, thank you, Ms. Barton. When you come to the mic, please state your name and identify what item you're speaking on. So the people who are watching at home or might be watching the YouTube channel later will be able to know who's speaking and on what. Thank you. Ms. Shanley.
My name's Ruth Ann Shanley. In a few months, I've lived in Santa Monica 45 years. I've been living in a senior building almost 11 years, and my health has been endangered. For 3 years, I have called every single department. I've left messages for all of you. Nobody ever called me back. I've spent almost 2 years. A gentleman that lives he doesn't live in the building. He's a caretaker, but this woman is not bedridden. And I finally filed a complaint with the landlord, and they got attorneys. I mean, I've even called HUD in Washington. And this guy who doesn't live there, is not a tenant, smokes all the time. And I've already got a breathing issue. I get dry nose. I can't even go on my patio because he smokes all the time. So I'm telling you this because I realized in the last year that you guys have so much power. And just like what's going on in our country, nobody's enforcing the rules. The people I tried to hope they would come tonight from the code enforcement, and the police get dumped everything. They tell us in code enforcement, the police are supposed to come and blah, blah, blah. I've had people working on roofs at 11 o'clock at night. I've had trucks about 5 in the morning, you know, the backup sound. This is killing me. Living in this city is killing me. And if you're going to do anything with the smoking rule, please make it be enforced. It's not the police job. And then code enforcement, I think in 80, they kept saying, well, we're going to hire one person to do the whole city for all this stuff. Well, there isn't really, I don't think, that many, but let's say there's 6 cases in 8 hours. Why can't we do that? Because just making rules, like I said, our whole country is kids don't listen. They're not, no enforcement. I mean, both my kids work in schools. Please make somebody enforce these rules.
Thank you, Ms. Shanley. Ms. Griesbach? And if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. And can you let us know what item you're speaking on?
Yeah, no, you got it perfect. Hi, my name, hello, Mayor, council members, good evening. Thank you so much for having me tonight. My name is Stacy Griesbach, and I'm excited to be here because I'm speaking on 16A, the appointment to one unscheduled vacancy on the Arts Commission. I am a very big proponent of the arts. I am a musician myself. I moved here from the Great Midwest, and I've been living in California for 20 years, Santa Monica for more than 15, and love the city, love living here. I was recently a vice president of worldwide publicity at Sony Pictures. I worked at the studio for over almost 15 years, and I ran strategic marketing campaigns. I worked with talent, I worked with musicians, I worked with filmmakers, producers, and business executives, along with the media. And I would like to bring that vast network and my strategic thinking skills, along with my passion for the arts and my passion for bringing the arts alive here in the city of Santa Monica, to this position. And I just wanted to introduce myself and say hello. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Griesbach, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Ms. Hoover.
Good evening. My name is Ann Hoover, and I've lived in the city of Santa Monica for 26 years. I'm commenting on item 10D, and I wrote into all of you with 3 suggested revisions to new subsection 16, the smoking prohibitions. First, they really should kick in at a minimum of 40 feet rather than 20. Not going to be able to spool out my tape measure, but go home and do it yourself. The second suggested revision I have is that you should call out the alleys specifically in the new language, because in my experience, the alleys often generate the most smoke of any of the public right-of-way areas. Third, fundamental fairness and equal protection under the law would direct us all to provide these protections, not just for our multifamily housing residents, but for all residents in our city in all dwellings, be they multifamily or single family. Babies, children, teenagers, seniors, immune-compromised individuals, people with asthma, COPD, or other illnesses live everywhere in our city, not just in our multifamily situation. So these new revisions fairly should apply to all dwellings. In addition, hey, the right to do something ends when you start harming other people. That's why we regulate drunk driving, which kills an estimated 12,000 people per year. In contrast, secondhand smoke is estimated by the CDC to kill 41,000 people per year, which is 4 times as many people as drunk drivers kill. So in closing, is 20 feet going to be enough of a protection? I think not. Imagine me, I'm smoking, I've made a cloud of smoke. The wind's at my back, it blows right over to you. 20 feet is about the back of Ms. Negretti's chair. Pretty soon it's in your space and you're breathing it. So maybe it's okay for healthy adults, but what if you're a baby? What if you have lung cancer? What if you have asthma? What if you are compromised?
Thank you, Ms. Hoover. And according to my list, that concludes the public comment. So we'll close the public comment for our remaining agenda items, and we will move on to our 8 items, Madam Clerk.
So we have item 8A, which is adoption of a resolution amending council rules of order and procedure and review of public input pilot. And Assistant City Clerk Nikema Newsom is going to be presenting.
Good evening, Council. Assistant City Clerk Nikki Newsom presenting tonight on the public comment pilot and the council rule changes. Tonight, staff is recommending that council provide direction to staff to either continue the public input pilot as is, return to the previous method for public input, or adopt a new method based on modifications from the aforementioned options, and to adopt the attached proposed resolution amending the City Council Rules of Order and Procedure. Just a little background so that everyone understands how we got to where we are today. In May of 2022, staff came to council with a study session to consider alternative options for holding public input to improve meeting efficiency, as well as to discuss the budget, staffing, facility, and technological needs for implementing hybrid council meetings with a call-in option for public input. At that time, council directed staff to implement a public input pilot to run through December 31st. That pilot was approved in June. In September, staff came to council to recommend an extension of the pilot until March 2023 in order to provide more time for the newly elected council members to become familiar with the process before voting on it at their first meeting in December. Council voted against extending the pilot at that time. In December, staff was prepared to present on this matter, but the item was continued to January 10th meeting. As a result, the pilot was extended to January. I just want to make a note in regard to hybrid meetings. At the meeting in June where the public input pilot was approved, a public hearing was also held to adopt the second year of the fiscal year 2021-2023 biennial budget. At that time, staff informed council that based on the budget, the funding wasn't available to implement hybrid meetings in September, as staff had previously suggested, without council approving budget trade-offs to do so. Staff advised that this issue could be revisited as part of the mid-year budget review in February 2023 to consider options to fund hybrid meetings. So we'll now turn to the public input pilot. So first, under the previous public comment method, public input on each agenda item was provided at the time that the item was held. General input was held at the end of the meeting, and written public comments are permitted, provided they are submitted by noon on council meeting days. Under the public input pilot method, there are essentially 3 public input periods, beginning with general public input, which was moved to the beginning of the meeting, followed by input for special agenda items, closed session, and the consent calendar held prior to closed session. And finally, public input on the remaining agenda items, minus public hearings after the consent calendar. Public input for public hearings is held at the time the item is called, and written comments continue to be permitted by the noon council meeting day deadline. So staff is suggesting to council these 4 options pertaining to public input. They are to return to the previous method, continue with the pilot on a permanent basis, extend the pilot for a limited time, or select a new method. One option for a new method would be to limit public input to 2 comment periods, with the exception of public hearings, which would continue to be allowed during when the public hearing is held on that item. Should council choose to adopt the 2 comment period method, staff would recommend discontinuing the time donation policy because the person providing public input would have a set period of time, as established by council, to speak on 1 or more items during an allotted time period. Next, we'll turn to the proposed rule changes. I think everyone has a copy of these in front of you, but if not, I am going to read them into the record for the public's benefit. First, they clarify the role of Robert's rules. They permit amending the meeting calendar to add or delete regular meetings. They eliminate gender-specific language. They allow the city attorney to add closed sessions or other items related to the city attorney's office. They provide deadlines for the following agenda preparation items. They stipulate that council items may be added no later than Monday, 8 days before, and amended until Thursday at noon. Written variations to items to be submitted by noon the day before a council meeting. Council members are encouraged to notify the city manager of their intent to pull and discuss consent items by noon the day before a meeting. And board and commission reports are to be submitted to staff 11 days before the meeting. Council items should be initiated as 16 items. Proclamations may be heard before closed session. Council may provide direction to return with something in a study session. They address the interruptions for point of order, adding the city attorney may raise points of order. Board and commission report default time is 5 minutes, which is codifying our current practice. It allows the mayor to approve changes in seating for good cause, allow the approval of staff recommendations in one motion, incorporate Robert's rules treatment of main motions, motions to amend, and procedural motions, providing clarity and simplicity. And it provides a process for disability accommodation request, which is also codifying our current practice. In addition to these rules, there's also an additional amendment regarding the rotation of mayor being introduced by Councilmember De La Torre. I will leave either Councilmember De La Torre or the city attorney to introduce that item. I want to highlight the ADA accommodation practice. Staff has advised or revised the ADA policy previously proposed in the December 13th staff report, as the proposal focused on one specific method for providing an ADA accommodation, while there are a variety of reasons and methods for providing such accommodations, and therefore no one-size-fits-all solution. As stated on the previous slide, this ADA accommodation problem now being proposed has already been in practice for both council and board and commission meetings. However, it tightens up the process for making such a request by requiring the requester to call or email the clerk's office to make such a request. The 72-hour deadline coincides with the agenda posting deadline required under the Brown Act. Excuse me. Imposing such a deadline is necessary to allow staff time to coordinate these needs. While some requests can be accommodated in-house, others require coordination with outside agencies. For example, a request for a sign language interpreter. Offering a call-in accommodation requires the possible consideration of scheduling additional staff for overtime to facilitate multiple requests for such an accommodation. In an effort to alleviate the perceived notion that certain requesters may be receiving preferential treatment over others, excuse me, imposing one deadline for all accommodation requests provides fairness for all concerned. As always, submitting written public comment remains a viable option for providing public input as an accommodation. And with that, these again are the staff recommendations, and I open up the floor for questions from council.
All right, do we have any questions from council members? Councilmember Brock?
I wanted to go back to the ADA requirements just momentarily. So if someone wanted to speak at a council meeting, they would have to, is it 72 hours business hours? So Thursday night before a meeting?
No, it's just 72 hours. It's the same deadline as the agenda posting deadline. So it's just
Friday afternoon.
I think 72 hours actually falls on Saturday at 5:30.
But there's nobody here to be able to.
You don't have to wait to that 72-hour mark. The agenda is actually posted.
Right, but my question is, if someone looks at the agenda on Friday afternoon at 5 o'clock when it's posted, theoretically, they can't request an ADA. Let me finish, please. Yeah. They can't wait. They cannot ask for an ADA accommodation until Monday morning at 8:30.
As long as we receive that request, whether it's a voicemail or it's a email, in our email box by that 5:30 time on Saturday, we'll accommodate it because it is received timely.
I think I still take issue with that.
Well, you have to keep in mind, too, that this practice is also for boards and commissions. They meet Monday through Thursday. So their 72-hour period could start on Monday and then run if they meet on Thursday or what have you.
So I'd say we'd asked for best effort by a member of the public, but as long as it was received by, let's say, the previous day at 5 o'clock, we would still do our best to honor that.
I mean, it depends on the accommodation. Again, some of these accommodations need to be handled by outside agencies. So if someone's asking for an interpreter, we're beholden to them to say yes or no whether or not they can provide that accommodation. In regard to phone calls, right now we only have one phone line in and out of chambers. So we can accommodate 1, 2, 3 callers if they just call in back to back while watching the meeting. If we get to a meeting where we have a lot of people asking for that accommodation, well, then that requires us to ask staff to work overtime because we would have to re-implement call-in studio in order to do that. So that's why we need that time. We need to be able to coordinate that time. So we're not trying to provide a hindrance to the public. We're just trying to give our staff time, the time to coordinate these efforts.
And I just want to remind everyone, we're in questions right now. We'll have an opportunity for comments later.
Okay.
Councilmember Zwick and then Councilmember De La Torre.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So the city, in your report, you indicated that the city didn't have resources for hybrid meetings at this time. And was that determination that we didn't have resources for hybrid meetings at all board and commission meetings, or could it have, what would it take resources-wise, or would it be feasible resources-wise to just implement it solely for council meetings?
If we do it for council meetings, we have to do it for all. Okay. So that's part of the problem. We might be able to start the process with council meetings first, but eventually we're going to have to start to roll out that process for other boards and commissions. It has to be equal across the board.
That's a legal requirement? Or?
I'd have to check. I'm not aware of that.
Okay. And you may have mentioned it. Is there, you said there's one line in and out, and you mentioned a name. I'm not sure if this was in reference to something that could manage that. Is there a software of some kind that could manage multiple calls, put them in a queue, otherwise do something? Is that what you were using prior? Or?
We used that during the pandemic.
Okay.
It was call-in studio, but that requires at least 2 staff to manage that, at least 1 person to facilitate the phone calls, to put them into queue, and then at least 1 person to serve as host to bring them into the meeting.
And what was the cost that we're talking about when it comes to making this possible, say, just at council meetings?
So we actually would switch to Teams if that were the case. And hold on for a second. I think there's actually a slide here that had all the numbers. And this is actually for all the boards and commissions as well. So the total for all boards and commissions is $459,852. You can see the line items for each department.
But what does it mean for an individual department if we're talking about meetings?
Because each department has their own boards and commissions.
Okay, and there's no line item for city council, or?
That would be under RES, clerk. So we need 1 part-time staff assistant, 3, and overtime for evening meetings. And then the meeting room upgrades are in that 94,944 number. But that's also other facilities. So I'm not sure what the exact number is for chambers in that.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I would just mention that at least in the rules, not in your presentation, but in the rules as written, it says that the request should be submitted in writing no later than 5 p.m. on the Thursday prior to the meeting, and that's even prior to when the agenda comes out. So I share the concern of...
That was actually the rule as it was stipulated in the December 13th meeting.
This is what's linked in the agenda right now.
No, we revised that. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right, Councilmember De La Torre. I'm sorry, Councilmember Zwick, were you finished? All right, Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Has staff done an assessment in terms of, the benefits of continuing the pilot, like in terms of resident engagement, people speaking, to us? Have we seen sort of a drop off? Has it increased with the pilot program or no change?
There's really been no change, and we even did a very rudimentary survey of staff and the public to see what they preferred. It was basically 50-50, but there really hasn't been any change.
Thank you.
And at this point in time, you mentioned that either the city attorney or Councilmember De La Torre had a proposed revision. Would this be the appropriate time to add that in?
Real quick, I'll just a quick introduction on the concept of the rotating mayor. I mean, kind of in light of what we saw at the national level, you know, where it's very difficult, the politics gets in the way of really focusing on, you know, the priorities of the people that we serve. I just thought that we can, you know, eliminate the political process, let's say, for lack of a better term, and just have a more egalitarian, a more fair way for us to select the mayor. And so I had a conversation with our city attorney. He has some experience from the city of Fresno. Since then, I also learned that in the city of Malibu, I think, city of Beverly Hills, they've been using this method as well. And I just thought that it would be a very positive thing for us, a step in the right direction for us to try to minimize the polarization, you know, on the dais. But obviously, you know, it's stuff. I want to make sure that the vote of the voters in this and the residents of Santa Monica is what's most important in terms of, you know, who gets elected and not any, you know, special interest or political party or whatever. And I think that this a rotating mayor would accomplish that better than the system that we have been using. And I don't know if City Attorney Sloan would like to add, because I know you talked to me about how it happened in Fresno, so I was also inspired by that as well.
Yes, I can provide some detail on that, and then on the proposed rule too. Yeah, I think in Fresno they started going to a rotation system when the council president vote went to like 26 votes one time. And then they've maintained that for about 20 years. So the proposed rule basically says that the selection of mayor would be on a rotation system, basically on seniority. In other words, whichever council member has been the longest would come up first. If there's a tie in the sense that several council members were elected at the same election, it provides that whoever received the higher number of votes would go first. Ultimately, if council members were appointed, if two or more were appointed at the same time, it provides for a coin flip, because I don't know what else you would do there. And so this proposed rule then would be consistent with what the council voted in December as far as the next 2 years. And then it also provides that pro tem, though, would still be approved the traditional way, just by simple motion. So that's the proposed rule. It's on page 12 of the document that I provided on the dais.
Question to the
Councilmember De La Torre.
And the rule regarding if this council just can decide by majority, is it by majority rule? That doesn't impact it in any way. They can remove the mayor.
Yes,
the mayor serves at the will of the
yeah.
council,
The charter
right?
does provide that the mayor serves at the pleasure of the council.
Okay, and that's 4.
This doesn't change that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And that's only 4, not 5.
All right. Do we have any other questions of staff? Councilmember Terosas.
Thank you. Thanks so much. So along the same lines as Councilmember Zwick, I appreciate the cost breakdown. With the passage of AB 2449 allowing for both our remote participation and, as I understand it, the hybrid participation of folks on boards and commissions and or remote/hybrid virtual public comment, did we look into how we potentially could take AB 2449 and implement that in a more inclusive way in Santa Monica, since that just went into effect on January 1st?
I don't have it in front of me. Do you want to go over that? I know we decided that because of a lot of the nuances in it, it's almost impossible to implement, but I don't have that in front of me. City Attorney Sloan, do you have 2449?
I don't either. You know, one of the options is to go to Zoom meetings,
Right.
In Fresno, they've used Zoom ever since COVID started and have kept it. And so the council members, of course, are physically present, but then the public can participate either in person or by Zoom. I know that's an option.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know we're not on comment time, but I do have some thoughts about this just based on like best practices from other jurisdictions that we've looked at. And I would hope that our city has looked at what other jurisdictions are doing to be as accessible and inclusive as possible.
Well, let's see, do we have any other questions? And then we can move to comment.
I wanted to, I wanted to comment on that, Councilmember Terosas. One of the issues with 2449 is that we are not able to do the audio video portion. Well, because we do city TV, we aren't able to do that. And then, of course, that comes along with the same things as the upgrades of technology and equipment. So it's not that we just said no to it. It's something that we have considered, but given the financial status and the equipment and the lack of equipment, we would not be able to fulfill 2449.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay, Councilmember Brock.
Following up on that, are there grants from the state or anything that could help us fulfill at least if you can go back to the dollar slide for a minute. I know the dollar slide shows $500,000 almost, but I'm looking at what do we do, the meeting room upgrades, which were $94,000, to do that. How would that help accomplish more input from the public, an easier way to have the public comment, accomplish ADA and other requirements?
That is the largest, that I would say that's the largest portion in terms of cost, one-time costs. But remember, and I think, well, you were here, it still takes a human being to be able, there is, and Councilmember Zwick said, is there a software? Unfortunately, yes, there are plenty of softwares, there's plenty of technology, but it still takes a human being to be able to bring a person into a meeting and to be able to manage the meeting. So that would be that would mean that you'd have to add staff.
And then to follow up on another thing that Councilmember Terosas mentioned, something I had asked, I think 2 years ago, is, and I know at the time our Internet Security Department was opposed to it, but Zoom has been used by other jurisdictions now throughout the state and nation. And you're saying that we cannot implement Zoom because of our current system? Well, I'm confused about that.
No, I think what...
Because we used two other systems, and it seemed to me that others, in fact, some of our neighboring cities use Zoom.
So I think what I would like to suggest is what we haven't done. So these costs were all developed pre-AB 2449, and I appreciate Councilmember Terosas reminding us of that recent adoption. So when these were prepared, they were done under a different set of regulations that didn't require the two-way communication that is required under AB 2449. So I do think we would have to look and revisit these costs because I'm concerned that they would actually go up because Zoom, I understand what you're asking for, but we have to think about how we would make it a two-way because we have to provide both audio and visual for the member of the community and for us. This doesn't reflect that right now, and so we'd have to figure out what type of technological upgrades would be needed to accommodate that in the chambers given the city TV requirement that the city clerk just talked about. So my concern is that these numbers here are even a little bit stale relative to current law.
Could we ask that staff come back, even though I know we're, to put it mildly, cash-strapped, but could we come back with an estimate on not the entire library, public works, community services, et cetera, but the part about the city council and looking at a Zoom system and looking at the necessary upgrades for the chambers to make sure we could more easily accomplish ADA, more easily accommodate residents who wish to speak in meetings.
Councilmember Brock, we can certainly do that. However, I just want to remind you and the entire council that when we originally started doing that, most of the request for us to be able to do remote meetings were from the advisory bodies. So for you to ask for it to just be for the city council and not for the advisory, I'm just making you aware, because you will hear from them before you hear from me. So.
No, I understand, and I know that we want to make sure that commissions also have that ability, but we may have to parse that out for a while and upgrade slowly. So I do understand. Thank you.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Negretti.
Since we're sort of leaning in, and you said earlier that it has to be across the board the same way, but we're not clear on that.
I've checked, and I don't believe that's a legal requirement.
Okay,
But if we do it for council, we have to do it for all.
Yeah, I met with the Disabilities Commission, and, you know, when you said that, because I was planning on bringing that up separately to try to do a pilot for them, because there's a lot of missing elements apparently for people to be able to participate in those meetings, and they need special things, I think, even outside of what we're talking about. So I guess that would be separate, right?
Yeah, and I guess, and you know, Clerk Anderson Warren brings up a good point. It is actually coming from the actual advisory bodies more that they want to remain remote, or they want to have that option. And so if we roll it out for council, they're going to be clamoring for it too.
Got it.
So as
if we did it the other way around.
Right, exactly. It's, you know, it's going to wind up becoming a larger problem. If you do, if you know, just like with kids, if you do for one, you got to do for all, right?
Okay, but we're not sure on that part. And then why?
I'm sorry, excuse me. I shouldn't have said that. It's not. I never said it was a state requirement or it was a legal requirement. I'm just saying, as a policy, if we're going to do it for one, we should do it for all.
Well, why I'm mentioning it is because if we're going to do it for one, the pilot should really be with the Disabilities Commission, because I think we should be looking at needs beyond what we've discussed here that they would need for their meetings, and it would make the most sense to start there and go the other direction. That's just my opinion.
Well, and I'm going to hop in here then and say, is one of the issues, and I think everyone needs to remember this, that many of our boards and commissions, including the Disabilities Commission, do not meet in this chamber. So if we're going to start to make technical upgrades, then even if we make them in this chamber, that's not going to help the majority of boards and commissions. So the question is, what happens at the Ken Edwards Center? What happens at Virginia Avenue Park? And so it seems to me that if, in fact, we are going to direct staff to come back, one, yes, we can ask them to break out the cost for the council only or the council chambers only. But I think if you really want to give a realistic estimate of what it's going to cost to do it, wouldn't it be fair then to include all the other locales where boards and commissions routinely meet?
And Ken Edwards Center has actually been taken out of the rotation due to staffing issues over there and parking. So it would most of the boards and commissions are either going to be housed here or over at SMI. The library will obviously stay at the library, and the parks are in rotation as well.
All right. Do we have any other questions? And then we can move on to comments. Councilmember Zwick, I see your hand up. Councilmember Brock, is yours a question or a comment?
No, it was a question. If we're looking at systems, possibly, as Councilmember Zwick mentioned, there might be a system we haven't looked at yet that might be more portable, that would use less staffing. So that's what I would encourage us to come back and at least look at that for mid-year. There may not be anything, I don't know, but if there is, we could maybe approach something that would be a more portable system. The same as when I went to...
You sound like comments, Councilmember Brock.
Well, it's still a comment. It's still a question. Yeah, it's sort of... All right. But at any rate, my request then, or a question would be, could we look at other systems we haven't looked at yet?
I'm sure we could. I mean, I would leave that to ISD. I'm sure they already have. But yeah, that would be something we'd have to take up with ISD.
All right, we're good. Councilmember Zwick, you had your hand up. Would you like to start the discussion, and then we'll go from there?
Sure, thank you. My first comment, just touching on what we were just saying about prioritizing, was I guess, at least to explain myself and my reasoning, is less about the needs of us on the dais or the needs of those serving on other boards or commissions, and more about the general public and the accessibility of these meetings. And while all the board and commission meetings are incredibly important, I think the general public as a whole has more of an interest in tuning into council meetings every other Tuesday. And, you know, we're talking specifically about requests for accommodation a lot for those with disabilities, and that's incredibly important for moral and legal reasons. But I would also point out that there were all sorts of populations, residents of the city that have a very hard time attending and weighing in on council meetings because they have a job that's at night, or because they have a commute, or because they're a parent of a young child or something like that. And I think that there's a strong value into allowing a broader portion of the electorate to be able to participate remotely, especially at council meetings if we are forced to choose. So that's the only thing on that.
All right, and before, I'm willing to take all the comments, but I do want to remember actually, and the city attorney, I may turn to you, the issue of hybrid meetings, is that encompassed within what's before us? Because actually that was not part of Ms. Newsom's presentation.
Not directly, but only in the sense of the conversation about making arrangements for accommodations with the city clerk.
Right, so I perhaps the thing to do is just to impose some discipline on this discussion is let's focus on what Ms. Newsom and staff have asked us, and then at the end of that, after we vote on changes to the council rules, perhaps we can give some collective direction to come back with some amendments. Does that make sense to everyone? So we don't get too messy here in what we're giving staff. So we give clear direction to staff on what they're asking for tonight, and then we can give direction at the end of that. Councilmember Brock, did I see your hand up?
No.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? Councilmember Terrosis. And I also see that you have already pushed the make motion button.
Sorry, I'm not sure how this works here. So I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I honestly don't know that I can support any of the options. I would support adopting a new method because I too believe that hybrid. I'm less concerned about us participating remotely. I'm way more concerned about hybrid public comment. And so, just for example, the way that we handle this at the county, you know, we have a number of folks who come in person, then we have another group of folks who testify over the phone. We don't need to see them. We do need to hear them. I've heard out in the community, I've engaged with a lot of folks on this, and I think our meetings would be much more accessible if we did allow for this hybrid public comment. So that is my concern. I also still have concerns about this, about Rule 15 around the request for accommodation. I don't think that that's reasonable. I think that someone should be able to call into the meeting if they need an accommodation to make a public comment. A lot of folks don't have the luxury of reviewing these agendas in advance, 72 hours in advance, and thinking about it and deciding they want to email someone at like an obtuse email address. So I think we need to make our meetings as accessible as possible. And so I would say, I like the structure of our meetings. I just think that we need to allow for remote public comment. Thanks.
All right. Again, going back to, does anyone have a motion on the proposed rules? Councilmember Brock.
I'll make a motion that we approve the rules, and I will accept friendly amendments on this.
I would, and then I would amend, we can accept.
Well, first we need a second.
Second.
All right, so moved by Brock, seconded by Terrosis. And before we move on, I just want to make clear that we understand what the motion is. Does your motion, we'll get to friendly amendments in a motion, but does your motion include the proposal regarding rotational of the rotation of the mayor?
Yes, it does.
Okay, Mayor, I just wanted to make that clear.
Mayor, can I jump in for a moment? Before you guys get to that, we still need to deal with the public comment portion on if it's going to be at the beginning, if it's going to the way it was.
Yeah, we keep getting stuck on the whole hybrid. I think we need to divorce that from what the actual matter at hand is, which is simply how are we going to handle public input as we currently have it right now.
Because we're in a pilot right now.
Right. Okay.
So could I shouldn't amend my motion. I can amend my motion that we extend the pilot 1 year as is.
All right, so let me restate the motion.
That works, thank you.
Okay. Well, no, and
then we discuss ADA and stuff later.
Right, and actually I was interpreting your motion, Councilmember Brock, as being actually the second part of what staff was asking for, which is adopting the attached proposed resolution amending the council rules. So maybe I read too much into that and made some assumptions. But so as I understand it, Councilmember Brock, you are moving to extend the pilot so that we will continue to conduct meetings in their current form. And you are also moving to adopt the attached proposed resolution amending the City Council's rules of order and procedure and including the language regarding rotating the mayor position.
Yes.
Are you seconding that motion, Councilmember Terosas? Understanding that it could be subject to friendly amendments regarding ADA options.
Sure, yes. Although why should we extend the pilot? Why don't we just adopt the rules? Do the rules, sorry, do the rules?
Currently the rules are just for the pilot, but we haven't gone back. It's just temporary. The pilot is only extended until this meeting.
Right, but I'm just saying if we like the way that things are going and we want to adopt these rules, let's just adopt these rules. Why do we need to have a 1 year?
Do you want to continue the pilot as is, or do you want to go back? So previously the items, public comment happened when the items were called.
I want to keep it as is.
Well, and maybe, Madam Clerk, the way to think about this is the reason for, or Councilmember Terosas, is the reason for extending the pilot is that I suspect at the end of this exercise, we're going to get direction about hybrid meetings, which may end up affecting the way we do meetings and the procedures that we use, because that obviously will be different. So maybe extending the pilot for a year gives us more than enough time to, I think, consider some of the concerns that we've heard expressed from the dais. Does that make sense to everyone?
Exactly.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion by Brock to adopt the attached proposed resolution, including the rotational mayor, amending the City Council's rules of order and procedure, and to extend the pilot for receipt of public comment in its current form for 1 year. And I see the city attorney would like to speak.
I have a suggestion for an amendment that you might consider. In the accommodation section, we might add that best efforts shall be used to accommodate requests received after the 72-hour deadline.
I like that amendment, yeah.
All right, I'm assuming that is friendly to both the maker and the seconder then?
Yes.
All right, hearing that it is friendly, we will include that in the motion. Any other proposed friendly amendments? Councilmember, or other comments? Councilmember De La Torre.
Yeah, just in terms of the, I've heard from residents who have said that they would like the opportunity to speak on the item itself. Will this extension of the pilot allow that, or can we allow that?
No, that would use the rules as we have exercised them tonight. So we would have 3 public comment periods. The first one, as I understand, would be the general public comment, for example, where we had all the vendors come tonight. The second would be commenting on closed session, consent calendar, and then the third would be commenting on all other agendized items. And I think the city manager is waving his hand. So let's see what he has to say.
There we go, sorry. I just wanted to ask the city attorney to comment on 2 things, because I know there's still going to be public comment attached to quasi-judicial actions that will occur. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And secondly, obviously, council could always suspend rules on any particular item at a council meeting to attach public comment to. That also doesn't change as well. So I just wanted to put those 2 clarifications out there if they're helpful.
Is that helpful, Councilmember De La Torre? And I would like to make the comment, since I don't see any other hands up right now, that actually I thought, for example, the vendors coming tonight, I think it was great that they were able to speak at the beginning of the meeting rather than in our old system where they would have had to wait, although this will hopefully be a more brief meeting, until the end of the meeting. Because I think given their situation, their ability to come, know when they're going to speak, and then be able to leave was important. And 2, I think, from my perspective, is having all the public comment at once makes more sense. If we start to break it up too much where, well, you can make your choice either before or after, then it gets a little confusing about what people are speaking on. So I think, I will be supporting the motion. I like the way we've been doing it, but I do think that we may have to make some accommodations in accordance with state law and with some other feelings that we'll perhaps express when we pass this motion, if we pass this motion, and then give direction to staff. So any other comments on the pending motion? Councilmember Zwick.
This is on the motion to approve all of the staff recommendations, right?
Yes, it's the staff recommendations, including rotational mayor and extending the pilot program for the way we take public comment for a year. With an amendment that best efforts will be made to allow accommodations for people who need them.
I was going to comment on the rotation of the mayor portion of that. I mean, I guess I think Councilmember De La Torre made a reference to national politics and the rancor therein, but I would make a more recent reference to the Democratic leadership in the House and Senate, and I would say that I think there are very good reasons why we elect our Democratic Senate leader and why, for instance, we have Chuck Schumer as opposed to our longest-serving member, Dianne Feinstein. And I would say that there are good reasons why we, as Democrats, many of us are happy that Hakeem Jeffries is the leader of the House of Representatives, of the Democratic leadership of the House of Representatives, and not the longest-serving member of the party in Congress. And I would just say that I think my fear with moving systems is that we would be essentially electing to erode the power of this body and its negotiations vis-a-vis the city manager and staff if we have not, as a body, elected someone who we believe would represent the council as a whole in discussions weekly and otherwise. And I think that, we need a mayor who can, who will be able to credibly speak on behalf of the council as a whole, or else their effectiveness and power would be thereby reduced, tipping the power away from electeds and residents and in favor of staff. I finally also feel that it's more democratic to allow the outcome of the latest election to determine where the city is and where the residents are in terms of who we would want to represent us as a body, as opposed to who was elected 4 years ago or 8 years ago as determining that. And lastly, my reading of the city charter, and this is for the city attorney, says that the council shall meet and shall elect its leadership. So I'm just wondering how it's possible that we could change this without a charter amendment.
Well, yes, the council would still have to meet and hold an election and vote, but procedurally you would vote this way. But yes, there would still have to be a vote.
Thank you.
Well, can I ask a follow-up question to that? So let's say we adopted this motion, and then in 2024, when the council reconstitutes, could the council at that time elect to ignore the rule, if you will, and say we would prefer, yes, I recognize that's the council rule, but whether it's by a motion to suspend the rules or just say we intend to elect new council member ABC.
Well, it expressed.
How binding is it, I guess?
This had come up in Fresno, so I provided that this is not subject to suspending the rules, but of course, any given council meeting, you could change the rule. So you would have to agendize it, vote to change this rule, and then you could proceed with a different vote on mayor.
Councilmember De La Torre?
And the council will always retain the power to make a change midway, 1 month into it, 2 months. If everything that Councilmember Zwick said, let's say there's a rogue city mayor that isn't doing what the majority of the council feels that he or she should be doing, that the council can remove that person with a simple majority, correct?
That's correct.
Councilmember Zwick.
Just a point of clarity, you said that they could amend it at any time by making a motion, but I know in the first meeting there was only one item on the agenda, and that was to elect who. Could that be the first motion of the first meeting, like it was when we were electing a mayor in December?
Yes, any given meeting, if it were on the agenda, you could change the council rules by simple majority vote. But it would have to be, if you waited until the election time for the mayor, then technically it would have to be before you voted for mayor at that meeting. But it could be at the meeting prior to that, too.
But then the new representatives wouldn't be able to make that motion? Or able to set that on the agenda?
If it were an election year, yes.
So they would have to follow the previous council's rules in that case?
Yeah, I think the city manager, and I do want to make sure we minimize side conversations so we're all on the same page if and when we vote.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, City Attorney, I'm reading the rules correctly, because I'm reading here about a suspension of the rules requires 2/3 of the council members present. So I just want to make sure we're delineating majority versus 2/3.
Right, but in this particular draft rule, it expressly provides this is not subject to suspending the rules.
Okay, perfect.
You have to change the rule first.
So let me propose something procedurally, if this works for both the maker and the seconder of the motion. Why don't we remove, since there seems to be some discussion, from the motion, the rotational mayor issue, adopt the rest, and then we can separately vote on the rotational mayor? Would that make people more comfortable so they could vote on that particular issue? But you would have to.
It would not be acceptable to me.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
I would just like to call the question. If we can't pass it, then we can do that.
Yeah, no, I was just trying to come up with a situation where people could vote on the, vast majority of the motion and then separate it out. But if people just want to vote no on the rotational mayor, that's also.
Yeah, I think we should just vote and see where it ends up, and if not, we'll find an alternative way to get there.
All right. Any other discussion, comment? All right, can we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson-Warren?
So this is on the recommendation to extend the pilot by 1 year. All the rules, including the rotation of the mayor. And then the amendment is the best effort will be made for the accommodation request received within 72 hours. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Zwick. I'm just doing a roll call. I'm sorry, you guys.
No.
No. Councilmember Parra.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas.
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes.
It passes 6 to 6.
That motion passes 6-1.
Right. So next we're moving on to item 8B. And 8B is adoption of a resolution amending and restating the audit subcommittee rules.
Well, we were going to do direction, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry. I was flipping my page and not paying attention there. We were going to do some direction relating to hybrid meetings. Okay. Councilmember Zwick, would you like to take the lead on that?
No, only that I think I would still love to understand the exact cost of creating a hybrid system for city council so that we can weigh trade-offs with other budgetary priorities.
And I would also just add, sorry, if this is friendly in the direction.
Well, it doesn't have to be friendly.
It's direction.
We're just giving direction at this point. So if people don't like the direction we're giving, we'll let you know.
Thanks. I would also like to see like a tiered cost breakdown. So what would it take to just allow for hybrid remote public comment at the council meeting versus hybrid remote public comment at all of our board and commission meetings? And I'm less concerned about participating the members of the seated body hybridly. I'm more concerned about allowing hybrid public comment. So I think that's like a delineation in cost if possible.
So it's essentially the same. Right.
Yeah, but like, I think that you were talking about when you said this was the cost about making.
No, I'm sorry. It's essentially the same as what Jesse was saying, that he just wants to see, I'm sorry, Councilmember Zwick.
No, it's okay. I was just saying like, you seem to provide a cost estimate for like making everything hybrid, including potentially our ability or a commissioner's ability to participate remotely. I'm saying, is there also a sub-tier to that where we can just get the cost for allowing remote public comment at council meetings?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying. Thanks.
All right, and Councilmember Brock, would you
I
like
want
to do
to
that?
just piggyback on that and agree with Councilmember Terosas. I'm not concerned about commissioners or city council members participating remotely. They're supposed to be back in person in whatever chamber they're in the city in a couple of months. I'm concerned about residents, people who wish to communicate with the council, having that ability. That's it.
Right, and just to let you all know, that's actually what was the proposed numbers in the first place. It had nothing to do with council members, any of that.
Right, and the one thing I would like to add is, and I know you will do this, but just so it's explicit, is as someone, and some of my colleagues were here as well, who sat through that remote participation, it was at times painful. People, whatever system we were using, people were getting a lot of text, I dropped off. They were listening to the 1812 overture, sometimes for hours on end, which would drive anybody crazy. So, I mean, I think it's not just, I just want to make sure we look at alternatives to what we used before, because at least speaking for myself personally, I did not find that to be a very welcoming or effective system.
I think the proposed method was to use Teams. That's what ISD has been recommending. That's what we've been using, rolling out for all the boards and commissions.
Okay.
So it would be a patch through Teams in order to do that.
Sure, that's fine. I just felt compelled to make that statement, having sent through many painful hours, as did some of my colleagues here. You know, hello, are you there? All right.
On us too.
Okay, so I think we can move on to item 8B. Is staff comfortable with that direction? Do they understand what council is looking for?
Yeah, we'll come back with cost estimates.
Perfect, thank you so much. Item 8B then, Madam Clerk.
Okay, so item 8B is adoption of a resolution amending and restating the Audit Subcommittee rules of conduct to clarify the timing of the election of the Audit Subcommittee Chair and Vice Chair.
Good evening, Council. Happy New Year. The resolution before you is related to the rules of conduct of the Audit Subcommittee of the City Council, and it contains two changes that staff is recommending that the Council adopt. The changes were approved by the members of the Audit Subcommittee at its November meeting. The changes clarify that the Chair and the Vice Chair would be elected at the first regular meeting of the calendar year. And also, there is a change that is being proposed that the criteria required for the community members to qualify to serve on the Audit Subcommittee would be changed to eliminate the requirement for governmental accounting expertise and replacing it with a more general accounting expertise. And that is the end of my report, if you have any questions.
Do we have any questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Decavales-Hughes. Councilmember Brock.
Not a question. I move the motion.
All right, we have a motion from Councilmember Brock, and then that is including both changes
Yes.
proposed by staff?
Absolutely.
Councilmember Parra? And seconded by Parra. All right. And we have to get Councilmember Terosas to stop pushing that button.
Sorry, I was trying to make the motion.
That's okay. That's all right. That's right. The world belongs to the speedy up here on the dais. Motion by Brock, seconded by Parra, for the staff recommendation to change the audit committee rules as recommended by staff. May we have a roll call vote, please? Yes, motion by Brock, seconded by Councilmember Parra.
Councilmember Zwick,
Yes.
Councilmember Parra,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete,
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas,
Yes.
Councilmember De La Torre,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes, that motion passes, 7-0.
Mayor Pro Tem, can you hit your button?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Negrete, can you hit your button so we are recorded for posterity?
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you for the assistance there. All right, that motion passes unanimously. We are on to item 8C.
So item 8C is the continued board and commission appointments. The first one is the Airport Commission, then we have the Disability Commission and the Personnel Board. So for the Airport Commission, we have one seat. We have 6 applicants, and I open the floor for nominations.
All right, do we have any nominations for the Airport Commission? Councilmember Terosas.
I will nominate Mr. Joseph Pertel to the Airport Commission.
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any other nominations? All right, then by acclamation, we will unanimously appoint Joseph Pertel to the Airport Commission. And congratulations, Mr. Pertel, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
Now we have the Disabilities Commission, and we have 1 vacancy, and we have 1 applicant.
And it should be noted that that applicant does identify as a person with a disability. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, do we have a motion to appoint someone for the Disabilities Commission?
I'll make a motion.
I'm going to, okay, Negrete, Councilmember Parr, would you like to second that? Yes. All right, so we have a motion and a second to appoint Cynthia Paganuzzi, sorry, I just butchered that completely, and I apologize tremendously. Any other, since there were no other people applying, can that be by acclamation?
Yes.
All right. Ms. Paganuzzi, welcome to the Disabilities Commission, and thank you for your willingness to serve.
And next we have the Personnel Board. We have 1 vacancy and we have 2 applicants.
I'd like to make a nomination.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Negretti.
Melanie Allen.
I'll second.
All right. Any other nominations? All right. Seeing none, that we will appoint Melanie Lutheran Allen to the Personnel Board by acclamation. Thank you, Ms. Allen, for your willingness to serve.
Thank you, Council. Okay. Next we have, so let me read this. We have the ordinances. In accordance with Charter Section 615, the adoption of all ordinances and resolutions shall be by reading of title only unless the council member present dissents. So we have 10A, it's the second reading and adoption of an ordinance amending Santa Monica Municipal Code Section 4.85.010 and 4.85.015 related to lobbying activity and participation of lobbyists on city and Santa Monica boards and commissions. And this is a second reading.
I move approval.
All right, motion by Brock.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Negretti. May we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson-Warren? Oh, sorry, Councilmember Zwick?
May I make a comment, or is that not?
No, you're welcome to make a comment.
Okay. I know it's the second time we're having a second reading on this, and I apologize, but I have received a lot of feedback. And I just, in my reading still of this ordinance, I do still worry that it is overly broad in terms of its definitions. There's a whole category of mission-driven jobs at nonprofits, whether in the service of the environment or affordable housing. And a lot of the people who are motivated to serve in those jobs are the same people who would be motivated to serve our city on boards and commissions. And, just by way of example, one might say that every homeowner or landlord in this city has an economic stake in our city's housing policy, and yet they are free to serve, while someone who works for a nonprofit that advocates for affordable housing and lobbies the city in terms of its policies in that regards would be barred from serving on any commission. And subsequently, I would have to imagine that someone who works for an environmental organization like Heal the Bay, which is committed to the cleanliness of our Santa Monica Bay, and wants to influence Santa Monica's policy, as the organization does, and in the service of such a mission, would also be barred from serving on the Environmental Commission. And if I see that there are various exemptions as written in this ordinance for architects and contractors and other people, I would advocate that, or I would make a motion to amend that we include those that work for nonprofit organizations, 501c3s, in favor of the public, that work in service of the public good, should also be included among the exemptions that we include for those we are terming lobbyists for the purpose of this ordinance.
And is that a proposed friendly amendment?
If it's friendly received.
Well, that would determine, that would go to Councilmember Brock as the maker of the motion and Mayor Pro Tem Negretti as the seconder.
And the answer is it's not friendly.
All right.
Wait, what was he proposing exactly?
The motion is that there are a number of listed exemptions to this, and it seems to me, frankly, somewhat arbitrary, especially, again, when there are people, young people, lots of people who desire to serve the public good and therefore take a job at a nonprofit and say to serve and better the environment of our city or increase the level of affordable housing in our city, and would therefore be termed a lobbyist for the purposes of this ordinance and barred from serving the city, when they might be the very people who would want to lend their expertise and their passion to the city. And therefore, I would move that those who work for nonprofits, 501c3s, be also listed among the exemptions that we would categorize as lobbyists.
And that was not friendly to either the maker. And since it wasn't friendly to the maker, we didn't even get to the seconder. Well, I do want to ask City Attorney Sloan, because we did discuss this quite at length. This ordinance does only apply to people who are directly lobbying the city, is that correct?
Yes, first of all, and we provided some clarifications today to try to help with that. But so somebody would be banned in that situation if they work for a nonprofit only if their job was to lobby and they actually lobbied the city of Santa Monica. Not purely working for the nonprofit alone does not create the disability of being able to be appointed on a board or commission.
Can I just make another
Sure, go ahead,
quick comment on that? I see that as written as a clarification that says if they only have an incidental function of terms of lobbying that it would be excluded. But I see that nowhere written in the ordinance, where it says a lobbyist is any individual who receives economic consideration for communicating with any official or employee of the city for the purpose of influencing city action. It doesn't indicate whether that is a one-time thing or incidental or entire to their job.
Yeah, yes, we read it to mean if they are paid, in other words, they're paid economic consideration for the purpose of influencing the city of Santa Monica. In other words, if that's their job. That's our legal interpretation, and that would be applied for what that's worth.
And City Attorney Sloan, would that statement that you just made be part of, for example, the legislative history then of this ordinance? So if there were to be some concern by someone, that the interpretation that you just enumerated would guide the decision?
Yes, we may provide a formal legal opinion that could accompany the adoption of the ordinance if that's what you would like, consistent with what we provided earlier today.
Is that something you would like, Council Members Wick? That doesn't commit you to necessarily voting for the ordinance, but is that something you would like?
Yes, I would like that. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Council Member Terosas.
Just again, I echo Councilmember Zwick's concerns, and I still think that the way that this is defined is pretty broad and difficult to interpret. So I think some interpreting language from your office for the ordinance would be helpful. I also wonder, and maybe this is for a subsequent discussion, what it would take for us to establish some sort of ethics commission where we actually had lobbyists register with the city so that we could have a better handle on what's going on here. In my day job, we get a list periodically of all of the registered lobbyists who have registered with the county, and we know who we're talking to and what the rules are. And I just think it makes it a little bit cleaner. So I think for the future, I would feel more comfortable if that's what we did.
Councilmember Brock.
I also, once again, Caroline, am in favor of having a city sunshine commission or an ethics commission established within the next year. I think that would be something that would help transparency and help residents once again be able to peer behind the curtain and make sure that they see what's happening in the city. Thank you.
But that wasn't part of the motion.
No, I'm just.
Right. I think that's something we should probably discuss it. Well, I think that's something we should discuss at another time. I want to remind everyone that establishing a board and commission is not an financially neutral decision to make, and that if in fact we were to establish that commission, we would all be called upon to decide what we weren't going to do with the money that was used to establish that commission. So I think rather than just give direction, say go forth and do a commission, that requires some greater discussion, and that's something, you know, city staff can think about in the meantime, but let's not make that decision tonight.
I'd like to call a question.
All right. May we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson-Warren?
Councilmember De La Torre?
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas? Councilmember Terosas?
I'm going to vote no.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete?
Yes.
Councilmember Brock?
Yes.
Councilmember Parra?
Yes.
Councilmember Zwick?
No.
And Mayor Davis?
Yes, that motion passes 5-2, and with the direction to the city attorney to provide an analysis of how this would affect employees of 501c3s. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we have is 10B. It's the second reading and adoption of an ordinance to award a franchise to Big Outdoor for the installation, operation, and maintenance of a digital wayfinding and out-of-home advertising kiosk network for a 20-year term per the terms and conditions stated in the ordinance. And this is a second reading.
All right, is anyone making a motion here?
I'll make a motion to move. Oh,
All right, moved by Councilmember Para,
second.
seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Negretti to adopt the resolution sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. Second reading and adoption of the ordinance to award a franchise to Big Outdoor for the installation, operation, and maintenance of a digital wayfinding system. May we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson Warren?
Councilmember Zwick.
Excuse me, sorry, we're moving to adopt this?
Yes.
All right.
Did you want to make a comment before we voted?
I wasn't sure if there was going to be any, never mind. Excuse me.
You're free to make a comment, but it's second reading, so there's no public comment or no staff presentation.
Got it, thank you. Yes.
Councilmember Para.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas.
No.
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that motion passes 5-2. And Councilmember Terosas, can you record your no vote, please?
Sorry.
Nope, that's fine. We're just making sure we have it for posterity.
Thank you. Now the next is an introduction and adoption of a proposed emergency interim zoning ordinance to extend interim zoning ordinance regulations, allow certain 100% affordable housing projects to request waivers or reductions of development standards pursuant to the state density bonus law.
Oh, I was going to say, do we have a staff presentation?
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Roxanne Tanamori with the City Planning Division. Item 10C pertains to one component of state density bonus law and regulations that apply to certain 100% affordable housing projects. Staff recommends 2 actions for this item as outlined in your staff report. 1, adopt a finding that no subsequent environmental review is required as outlined in your report. And 2, introduce and adopt an emergency interim zoning ordinance to extend interim regulations allowing certain 100% affordable housing projects to request waivers or reductions of development standards in addition to other incentives required by state density bonus law. Council originally adopted this ordinance, this emergency IZO on December 13th with the inclusion of a restriction on project eligibility in the Pico neighborhood while these interim regulations are in effect until February 13th. Staff recommends the extension of this IZO until May 31st. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Do you have any questions from council? All right, thank you, Ms. Tanamori. Do we have any discussion or anyone care to make a motion?
Move to approve.
All right, moved by Councilmember De La Torre, seconded by Councilmember Brock. A motion to adopt the finding that there is no CEQA review required and to further extend the emergency interim zoning ordinance until May 31st. Is that correct?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
We're still exempting the Pico neighborhood from this, correct?
We are in the recommendation before you. We will bring a final recommendation on that with implementation of the housing element first quarter.
Right, so for the permanent ordinance, it's possible that the Pico neighborhood could be included?
We'll be evaluating that, yep.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion by De La Torre, seconded by Brock. Seeing no other comments, may we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson Warren?
Councilmember De La Torre.
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete.
Yes.
Councilmember Brock.
Yes.
Councilmember Para.
Yes.
Councilmember Zwick.
Yes.
And Mayor Davis.
Yes, that motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And then next we have introduction and first reading of an ordinance modifying Santa Monica Municipal Code Section 4.44020 to enhance enforcement of prohibitions of smoking in multi-unit common areas and near multi-unit residential buildings.
I'd like to make the motion to move it, but I just wanted to clarify.
Well, I think we're jumping ahead.
Sorry.
Putting that cart before the horse. Do we have a staff report?
I didn't see anyone.
I believe I was going to describe the ordinance.
All right, thank you.
Since this was initiated by a 16 item. Yes, so the existing municipal code bans smoking in a number of places, and this would add to some locations where smoking is prohibited. It includes common areas of multi-unit residential complexes, except where there are designated smoking areas. And then also it would prohibit smoking on the city right-of-way, sidewalks, and streets within 20 feet of a doorway to a multi-unit complex or an open window. It would provide that for the common area enforcement, that would be exclusively code enforcement, subject to initially a warning and then an elevating administrative citation system. It also provides that code, where there's been a violation, can require that signage be posted that it's a no smoking area. And also then for the public right-of-way areas, it would be expected that the police department could be enforcing it there as they enforce potentially smoking violations in other areas in the city where it's prohibited.
And can I ask just a clarifying question? The issue of alleys came up, and you just used the term city right-of-way, which typically would include the alleys. Are the alleys meant to be included?
I would suggest, just to be clear, it wouldn't hurt to insert alleys as well as sidewalks and streets and so forth.
I also have the question about the 40 feet. I saw you replied in the email about that. So to me, it's hard for me to spatially understand the difference between 20 and 40 feet without measuring it out. So I don't know.
That's a judgment call as to whether you prefer it to be 20 feet or 40 feet. That's not a legal issue.
Councilmember Parra.
Can we pace it out?
20 feet would be about the length of a big pickup truck.
Pace it out with your feet. Can we do that real fast so we can just see?
Is it written in any other sort of ordinance that's comparable to that? Do you know what I mean? Is there something similar?
20 written in the current one, I believe.
Where's that measured?
Right.
Yeah, I believe that's written in.
I think Mr. Martin is going to.
I don't have a tape measure, but I would just say a typical front yard setback is 20 feet.
Okay.
So if you think of the distance from the curb or to the edge of the sidewalk to the house, usually 20 feet.
Distance across an alley.
Alleys are.
Well.
Okay, let's do it one person at a time here. Okay, we're going to impose a little bit of order. Mr. Martin, do we have an estimate as to what the average alley width is?
Alleys are 20 feet as well, yeah.
That's window to window, right?
Yeah.
All right.
Do you think they're not that wide?
I think it depends on which alley we're talking about.
And I have a question if you.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is. I can look. Let me look. Yeah.
They really vary.
Yeah.
30 feet?
All right, Councilmember Brock.
So, all right, so what would 40 feet be? Let's say from here to Senator Jones?
Well, I can tell you this, Council, I know this. 20 feet is about the length of a large pickup truck. So it'd be 2 pickup truck lengths, 40 feet.
That applies probably more in Fresno than Santa Monica.
All right, do we have any other questions? Councilmember Terosas.
Yeah, I would just say that I think I'm concerned about making sure we're not disadvantaging our renters in multifamily buildings. I am very clear on the negative health impacts of smoke, secondhand smoke, thirdhand smoke. However, there are folks that have been in our community for a long time. I am concerned that 40 feet could be unduly burdensome for some folks to walk out of their multifamily unit and go all the way 40 feet. I think if 20 feet is our normal setback, that makes sense. Let's keep it in line with that. And that would be my comment.
Mayor Pro Tem Negretti.
Okay, sorry. To me, the inconvenience of someone's health far outweighs someone's convenience to be able to smoke a cigarette. And that's for their own benefit as well. So as far as that issue, I mean, I don't see that as an issue. I just, for me, spatially figuring it out, I was just trying to keep in line with anything we've ever done. I mean, he just did that. I know. You want to pace it out? Okay.
That's how we do it.
I think the idea is to protect people from secondhand smoke, right? So however we can best do that, I don't have the science behind what feet is appropriate for when the smoke dissipates and doesn't affect you as much. But if somebody here has that information, then maybe we can, if not, we can say 30 feet to come somewhere in the middle. I don't.
Okay. Councilmember Brock, then Councilmember De La Torre.
I had a question. A resident also mentioned, a resident of a single-family house came up earlier and spoke to us and mentioned that we not only do apartment units, but we also do single-family residents, just make it a blanket resident rule against smoking on or about someone's house next door, because you only have 3 feet, for instance, between your adjoining houses as well, 3 to 5 feet. So that would be my question. Can we incorporate all residential units in the city?
So a question, are you meaning the public right-of-way as opposed to the common area? Because there's not really a common area issue with single family.
I think public right-of-way, well, no, you'd say both, common area for apartments.
There's not a common area when it comes to single family, so.
Yep. We have a tape measure.
Look at that. He's awesome.
Ask and ye shall receive. You can just catch it right there.
He's going.
Okay.
Pretty big.
So,
okay, who wants to light up a cigarette?
All right, well, let me ask a question, Councilmember Brock, because I was a little unclear. We are not banning smoking
in private
private areas. So I don't know if including it in single family, we can't ban people from smoking in their own homes.
No, I understand that. I was mentioning that Ms. Hoover had mentioned that, and the question was, I was asking if there was any validity to her request, and I'm not sure there is, but.
Council, well, in developing this ordinance, we spent a lot of time discussions with the police department and code enforcement on enforcement resources, and they would be strained even to enforce this ordinance. And so if we extended it to single family also, I think that would be even more difficult.
It would be just an ordinance in paper only.
Was I next?
Yeah, you were next, Councilmember Negrete. De La Torre. I'm sorry, I'm looking at this and I've seen some, sorry.
I do, I agree with the sentiment of Councilmember Brock in terms of how we can expand this. I just feel that this is we should probably start small, and see how code enforcement can handle these. And I know that it's really important. And I know the problem would probably be more in like multi-unit housing. And this is, I think, really important to supporting our tenants, our renters, in terms of their public health, and the space that they live in. So I'm not too concerned with the issue of also how this might be used as a way to evict tenants. I do understand that none of this would make it, possible for smoking to be a cause of action for eviction, correct?
Right. The ordinance expressly provides that violations cannot be used for an eviction.
Okay, so there's protections in that.
Yes.
It's just the main issue is if you like to smoke, you have to take it away from people and not be infringing on their right to breathe cleaner air. Thank you.
All right, so Mayor Pro Tem Negrete, apparently you pushed the make motion button, but I just want to make sure, what motion are you making?
To move it the way it's written.
But include alley?
Including the alley,
okay.
Verbiage about the alley, explicitly.
Councilmember Parra.
Would council be amenable to maybe making it 30 feet as opposed to 40?
Well, first we need a second to Mayor Pro Tem Negretti's motion. So we have a second, and now you are proposing a friendly amendment. Would 30 feet be friendly to both the maker and the seconder?
It's friendly to me.
All right, so with an amendment to 30 feet, that is friendly to both the maker and the seconder. All right, so we have a recommendation from staff to introduce for first reading the proposed ordinance to the city smoking, proposed ordinance amendments to the city smoking ordinance with changes to the proposal as stated in the staff report, which would specifically enumerate alleys and would change the prohibited area from 20 feet to 30 feet. Does everyone understand the motion?
Is it from 40 to 30?
I'm sorry?
Is it from 40 to 30?
No, it's from 20 to 30. Okay. The staff report proposes 20, and it has been amended to 30.
Okay.
Councilmember Zwick.
Just, I guess, perhaps by way of another friendly amendment, I noticed that there's a new table of escalating punishments, fines, but it only applies to one of the new subsections and not the other. And I guess since they are both novel and perhaps unknown and likely to be unknown by people, it would make sense to me both that they would follow this newer and less harsh regime of fines, and also that the first one, as stipulated, be a warning. Right now it says it applies to subsection 15, which was added around the common areas of a multifamily unit, but not on the street, sidewalk, or public right-of-way. And at least, I don't know, I would prefer that first be a warning and go by that less harsh escalating series of fines like the other element that we've added.
Okay, there is a substantive difference between violations occurring on the private property in the common areas of the apartments and then violations in the public right-of-way. Administrative citations make sense on the private property because you know who it is. Administrative citations are very difficult in public areas. Typically, code does administrative citations where PD issues infractions. And so it's difficult to stop somebody. You don't even have a lawful ability to stop somebody for an administrative citation and then demand their name and so forth. So consistent with the other areas of the code here, the public area is treated like those areas and it would be an infraction and so forth. Now, you still could provide for the first violation, it should be treated as a warning. But the whole enforcement mechanism is different on private property than it is in the public right-of-way.
Well, I guess then I would make the motion to amend the section that says infraction with the same language provided under the administrative citation around the first being a warning.
I have a question about that. When, in certain respects to code, when, for example, when unpermitted vendors are given a citation, they're able to, if they can't afford the ticket, they are able to just pay the $10 or whatever it is. I think it's reduced to $10. Does this apply in this same circumstance? Like if you're given a citation for the smoking on common area, can you go and say, I can't afford it?
In other words, a hardship showing?
Yeah.
I think that applies throughout the code for administrative citations,
Right.
but not necessarily for infractions.
Okay, so for infractions, you can't do that.
Right.
And can I want to ask a clarifying question, because there is a distinction between code enforcement going on to private property versus a police officer. So with regard to the current prohibitions, which are public parks, parklets, public beaches, we don't give warnings there, is that correct?
It would be within the discretion of the police officer, but typically not, I suppose.
I guess my point is simply that it says now it would be $100 for the first violation, and that would seemingly indicate that a person smoking on the sidewalk as they're accustomed to as a way to abide by the law could be cited for an infraction for $100 by a police officer on the street without necessarily even being in knowledge of this new ordinance, and who are attempting to follow the law by going into what is traditionally a part of the right-of-way where they are allowed to smoke.
And I would agree with Councilmember Zwick's concerns. I know obviously our health and safety is paramount, but education and outreach is the best form of compliance. And I do think that having a notice to correct first, to give folks an opportunity to come into compliance first, is a much less punitive and more community-serving way to approach this. I also am concerned that we're going to get, I just seen hundreds of landlord-tenant issues, and I am concerned, even though we are explicit that this is not a grounds for eviction, because I've dealt with these individuals, there's going to be a he said, she said going on back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with hundreds of dollars of fines racking up on both sides. And I just want to avoid that situation as well.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Negretti?
I agree that if it's not, notated somewhere, unlike on an apartment common area, there's often signage that says you can't smoke here and you can't smoke there. So at least you can point to the signage, whereas maybe in a public sidewalk, there is no signage. So I'm agreeable to making it a warning first without imposing a financial infraction.
All right, and Councilmember Parr, I see your hand, but I just want to see, is that also friendly to Councilmember De La Torre as the seconder?
I would just clarify to make sure that we're saying the same thing, that I would take the language that was used under administrative citation for warning $50, $100, $200, and apply that to subsection 16 under the infraction.
Okay, so make an escalating fine schedule for infractions that includes a first warning.
And the lower levels of penalties.
With the same schedule of penalties.
That you proposed for the new.
Right, yes, we can do that.
And is that clear to everybody? Yeah. All right, Councilmember Parra.
Thank you. I recognize the concern, but my concern in terms of having this type of model is who's keeping track of the warnings and, so I mean, oh, okay, I didn't know. And then the next time someone gets called on the same person smoking in the public right-of-way out front of a multi-family unit dwelling, and someone goes out to cite them, again, it's a different officer, it's a different code enforcement officer, and the person, again, will play stupid, essentially, and say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. So that person can continually get warnings and warnings and never get cited and continually do the same thing. So how do we avoid that?
Doesn't that apply currently with the language around a warning? For
I think we have a response to that, and
Yeah, hi, I'm Daniel Mick. I'm the new code enforcement manager for the city. I can only speak to the code enforcement provision of it, but for warnings that are going to be issued for residential properties, we would keep track of that. We would issue a notice of violation. It's going to track the person's name. It's going to be trackable by the address, where it's going to be far more difficult to do so on the public right-of-way. That's going to be a little bit more difficult. I mean, PD would have to speak to that particular provision, but in my experience, PD has always tried to provide a warning to somebody before taking any type of punitive action. That's always been my experience, but I just can't speak intentionally for them.
Thank you and welcome. I do want to mention in response to that, Councilmember Parr, that actually, for example, and I have seen this in action, the police do keep track of warnings. For example, when people take dogs onto the beach, they issue warnings, and then I have actually observed officers ticketing people saying, I have you listed as someone who got a warning, and now you have your dog on the beach for a second time. I think the city attorney, and then I think Councilmember Brock would like.
Perhaps if we say warning, say written warning, so there's a record of it.
I think that would be fine, because I do know, for example, at least with the dogs on the beach issue, I frequently see the police citing people, and I eavesdrop on the conversation, and they say, you were warned before not to bring your dog on the beach. Which is why when my dog goes on the beach, I tell them I'm Sue Himmelrich. No, I really don't do that. I really don't do that. My dog is a well-behaved dog. Councilmember Zwick.
May I ask one more point of clarity about the ordinance as written?
Sure.
For the city attorney. It says for the section of belonging as pertaining to the right-of-way, continuously moving through the area. Does that mean that if you live on a certain block and you step outside to smoke a cigarette, that you cannot walk around your block?
What this is intended to mean that if you can't stand in one place and smoke, but if you're passing through the area continuously, then you're allowed to smoke.
But you would eventually, I assume, return?
If you were making laps, then I think the exception would still apply.
You can go home again, they say.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or clarifications? All right, so we have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Negretti, seconded by Councilmember De La Torre, to introduce for first reading a proposed ordinance relating to the city smoking ordinance with the amendments that we will specifically call out alleys as part of the public right-of-way, and that we will adopt well, we were going to change 20 feet to 30 feet, and we are also going to adopt the lesser inclusionary fines and penalties, including beginning with a written warning for all violations, both that are from code enforcement as well as the police on the public right-of-way. Does everyone understand the motion? All right, may we have a roll call vote, Ms. Anderson-Warren?
Councilmember De La Torre,
Yes.
Councilmember Terosas,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete,
Yes.
Councilmember Brock,
Yes.
Councilmember Parra,
Yes.
Councilmember Zwick,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes, that motion passes 7-0 by unanimous vote of the council.
Next, we have an appointment to one unscheduled vacancy on the Arts Commission for a term ending July 30th, 2025. And I'll now open it up. We have six, I guess the same six. We have six. Yes, we have six applicants.
All right, do we have any proposed appointments? Councilmember Parra.
Stacy, I can't say her last name, Grisbach?
Stacy Griesbach?
Yes, the young lady that came earlier today.
All
I loved
right,
her
is
energy.
there a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, moved by Griesbach, moved by Parra, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Negretti.
Can I make a substitute motion?
Well, no, you can,
Are there any other nominations?
yeah, we're just doing
Got it.
other
I wasn't sure how we
nominations.
did it. Okay. I would like to nominate Ethan Koretsky. Am I allowed to explain why or no?
No, we don't discuss
All right.
people on the dais because we wouldn't want them talking about us, would we?
Got it.
I will second that, Ethan Koretsky.
Okay, are there any other nominations? So we have Koretsky and we have Griesbach. When I call your name, tell me which one you want to vote for, okay?
Interesting.
Councilmember De La Torre. So it's Griesbach or
Stacy is, Stacy, yeah.
Stacy? Okay,
Yes, Stacy Griesbach.
okay. Councilmember Terosas,
Koretsky, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Negrete,
Griesbach.
Councilmember Brock,
Griesbach.
Councilmember Parra,
Grisbach.
Councilmember Zwick,
Koretsky.
and Mayor Davis.
Koretsky. Ms. Griesbach is appointed to the Arts Commission, and thank you for your willingness to serve. I will change my vote from Koretsky to Griesbach.
I'll do the same.
I guess I'll do the same. It sounds like that's what we do here.
We don't have to, it's not required.
No,
But if you
fine.
want to, you can. All right, so Ms. Griesbach is appointed unanimously, and again, thank you, Ms. Griesbach, for your willingness to serve.
No,
And then next we have appointment to one unscheduled vacancy on the Architectural Review Board for a term ending June 30th, 2023. And I'm going to ask council if you guys will, if you will continue this to a future date because there are no applicants.
That was apparent, so I would move that we continue this to the next, do you want us to continue it to the next meeting, Ms. Anderson-Warren, or to
No,
60 days down the
I'm saying
road?
Future date because once we get applicants, then we can go ahead and,
All right, do we need to ask you to republish the opening?
nope, we will do it automatically.
All right, so I would move that we move this appointment to a date down the road to be determined by staff in accordance with when we get some applicants.
I second.
All right, moved by Davis, seconded by Brock. This can be done by voice vote. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention?
Can I make a comment about this, though, after we're done?
Sure. Well, let's get through the vote. Any noes? Any abstentions? All right, that passes unanimously. Councilmember Terosas.
I just want to make it clear that we have 0 applicants for the Architectural Review Board, and there is a vacancy. So if you're watching this meeting and you're a member of the public, let's talk to our networks and get some great candidates. Thanks.
All right. And as I understand it, that brings us to the conclusion of agendized items. Is that correct, Ms. Anderson-Warren?
Is correct.
And sadly, we have some adjournments this evening. I'm going to start with Councilmember Terosas. Oh, you're doing the one that you said you had for, the other ones we're good with, just the one that you raised.
Tonight, I'd like to adjourn in memory of Peter F. Bradley. Peter Bradley was born on July 30th, 1940, and he passed away in Santa Monica in the last couple of weeks at the age of 82. Born in Chicago, he grew up in New York before attending William and Mary College, and from there he joined the Peace Corps to travel the world, which ignited his desire to give back. Peter was an English instructor in Santa Monica for more than 50 years, leaving a wake of thousands of students that he gave back to, enriching their lives, learning to speak English. And he was very active in our community with the Democratic Club, serving on the executive committee for over the past 10 years. As much as he was a giving soul, his passion was his Dodgers. So please take time to call a friend, a loved one, catch a game on TV out at the stadium, and in his honor, let's root for the home team in 2023. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Terosas. Councilmember Brock, I believe you also have an adjournment.
It is with great sadness that we adjourn this council meeting in memory of former Santa Monica Mayor Rex Hughes Minter. Rex was born September 21st, 1927 in St. Joseph, Missouri. He moved to California with his mother Fern and his stepfather Thomas Hicks in 1941. In the summer of 1944, he met Doris Weldon at Santa Monica High School, and they became instant sweethearts. They eloped on September 10th, 1945, when Rex was due to be shipped overseas by the Marines when he was only 17. Doris was able to join him in March 1946 at Pearl Harbor, where they enjoyed 18 months of a belated honeymoon. The two returned to Santa Monica in 1949 upon Rex's separation from the Marines with a child and many dreams. Rex went to college and law school at Loyola Marymount University. He started a law practice in downtown Santa Monica, where Doris was often his secretary. By 1955, at the age of 27, he was elected to the Santa Monica City Council, and he served as mayor of Santa Monica from 1963 to 1967. Rex served as a LA Superior Court Commissioner from 1968 to 1971, at which time he was nominated by Governor Ronald Reagan to serve as the judge of the Santa Monica Municipal Court, and later became a Superior Court judge. After his retirement in 2001, he served as an assigned judge throughout California until his complete retirement in 2012. Both Rex and Doris were avid aviators since 1948. They owned many planes over the years, and both became certified airplane mechanics after attending school together. In 1995, they renewed their vows on their 50th anniversary at St. Monica's Church, surrounded by their children and great-grandchildren. Rex is survived by his 3 children, Christy, Lori, and Thomas, as well as 8 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Rex was predeceased by his beloved wife Doris in May 22. On behalf of the entire Santa Monica community, we would like to convey our support and our deepest condolences to Rex's family during these difficult times.
Thank you, Councilmember Brock. And finally and sadly, I would like to adjourn tonight's meeting in honor of Paul J. White. Paul J. White is the father of our city manager, David White, and he passed away on December 23rd at the age of 88. His family held services for him earlier today at Mount Sinai in Los Angeles, with his loved ones who were there to honor his life. He was an avid gardener and tennis player, and someone here forgot to say an avid USC fan. And he inspired his son's love of the outdoors, for which David always will be grateful. Of course, we as a council, but I hope the community as a whole, will extend our deepest condolences to City Manager White and his entire family. And want you to know that we are with you in this difficult time. So thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned. And our next meeting is sometime later in January. No, our next meeting is January 24th, sorry. And so we will see you all then, and thank you very much, everyone. I just want to say.